Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals public hearing for May 2nd, 2017. We'll begin with the special order calendar decision items. Item number 1, 112964BZ, 14736 Brookfield Boulevard, Queens.
Good morning, Hillary Adstrath for applicant.
Good morning. I think we don't have any open issues, so I'd like...
Madam Chair, please.
Sorry?
Your microphone, please.
Oh, I thought it did. So I'd like to make a motion to grant on condition. The condition is, as we've talked about, that the ramp be installed as shown on the plans, and that any use on site must be in use group 6 in parking category B, so that we maintain the same parking standards. So on that motion to grant.
Chair Perlmutter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda? Sorry.
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Item number 2, 8005BZ, 49 West 33rd Street, Manhattan.
Okay. But that's a lot, big presentation for a decision.
Good morning, Douglas Kopp for the applicant.
Good morning. I believe you submit, fire department here on this case signed off on this. They said that they looked at everything and they're fine. So then I'd like to make a motion to grant.
Chair Perlmutter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda?
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Thank you.
Continued hearing items. Item number 3, 24055BZ, 20722 Northern Boulevard, Queens. And adjournment has been
Good morning, Jessica Rubenstein on behalf of the applicant.
Good morning. So you wanted to adjourn this,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
So,
We asked for about 4 weeks to submit, please.
4 weeks. So I need guidance on the availabilities.
4 weeks. What's the-
Yeah,
what's the
so
dates?
at least 4 weeks for a submit, right?
Correct. Yes.
So what's the end of June look like? No?
What is this? Is Northern Boulevard
Yeah.
extension of term? Week to the 27th?
Okay, does that work, the 27th hearings?
Of June. Yeah, that works.
Yeah, so that would mean a submit on June 7th. Is that enough time?
That would be great. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I'm in the wrong place.
Item number 4, 94957BZ, 2100 Williamsbridge Avenue, the Bronx.
Good morning, Jacqueline Calcagno of Ackerman for the applicant. I would like to respond to the issues raised at yesterday's review session. The first issue that was raised is the English ivy ground cover. We were trying to respond to the board's request from the last hearing, and ivy was mentioned as a low-growing plant that did not need a lot of sunlight.
Right.
So now, is it the board's request that we don't propose ivy and we go more with?
Well, my thinking about it was that, after thinking about the ivy, was that because this is sort of a trash attractive area, when you have ivy down, you just throw the trash on top of the ivy. But when you have something that's more rigid, like the juniper that grows to a little bit of height, it's very low, it grows to like 8 inches, right? Then it's harder to retrieve the thing because it's hard to walk back there. So if you have things that you can't just sort of store back there because they're hard to get, it might discourage use of it as a storage area. That's my thinking. I don't know what others think. Again, it's sort of amateur landscape hour, I think, on everybody's part, including the architect in this case.
I think the major issue is that there's not a lot of sunlight back there.
Right. So I don't have a lot of information about whether it works with sunlight or not with sunlight. That's part of the...
Okay.
Do other people have an opinion about this?
I do think, given that that area does not get much sunlight, we would want some kind of planting that will grow easily without
Right.
much maintenance. Otherwise, having a tree that's going to die is going to be of no use to us. So I think you should go back to your landscape architect and recommend something that is feasible, that addresses the concerns we have raised, and yet makes it easy for you to maintain, and that does not require that much sun.
Okay. But the ivy is not going to be sufficient, is what I'm understanding.
Yeah, I mean, in other words, it's trying to fulfill several different functions. And, you know, I frankly learned about this type of juniper just for this hearing. You know, part of it is we often get specifications from architects, applicants, who don't actually know anything about landscaping. So they're not landscape architects. They just sort of look something up and then they suggest it, right? So they're not really addressing the specifics of the site. And that's part of the problem. So it puts us at disadvantage, like they spec this Leyland cypress, which is a really, really tall tree, to be a buffer. So what ends up happening is the trunks grow really, really high, and the buffer is way up there at 10 feet off the ground, right? So then that's not doing what was intended, and in order to keep it low, you have to keep trimming it. So it needs a lot of maintenance. So it's actually wasn't the right thing to choose. So, and it's because they're, I don't know exactly how they're doing this, but I'm assuming they just have an A and they go online, they find something, right? They need to get a recommendation from a landscaper on what's the right thing to install in this location.
I think that's what was recommended by the landscaper.
So maybe you can go back and kind of identify what other options were and the pros and cons, and why, if you think this is the best one, lay that out for us.
Okay.
We are as not.
Yeah, we don't have a
well-informed.
landscape architect on board.
So if you can
yeah?
just give us all the options that were considered and the pros and cons of it, and what would survive on that location, would be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I think anything that gets put there is going to require maintenance, so
Say again?
The plantings that are located in the back area are going to require some kind of maintenance anyways. We will look into the options, but I think if we're proposing tree, the original plan was to have a dense buffer, and that's what was requested by the board, so I think we were trying to respond to that, but now I think we're in agreement as well that something that requires low maintenance would be
Yeah.
better. And also with they are going to put the vinyl slatted fence on, that's like facing the residential neighborhood, so that along with it's a wrought iron fence, and then the trees are
So
inside.
you can see
Yeah.
through the wrought iron.
Right.
Yes.
You have to change that note.
The note is confused. You can't have a wrought iron chain link fence. That doesn't exist.
Okay.
And that's going to be above the brick wall, so
So anything you plant, you actually want to see above that brick wall. That's the point.
Okay. And then the questions about the railroad tie planner, I had the architect revise the drawings because it was still showing a brick masonry, and I would like to submit revised drawings.
Okay, could we take a look? Because, you know, it actually would have been really helpful like 2 hearings ago if you came with the architect, because we've been asking for these details on the railroad ties for 3 hearings or something like that. And we still don't really understand how this thing is going to work because we haven't had the details. So,
What is the height of the planter box?
So he doesn't have it on here.
yeah, it still doesn't have the height. You know, this is like frustrating incredibly because
I mean,
we keep asking and we keep not getting. There's still no detail on the planter box.
I don't think it's going to be higher than like 4 or 5 feet, but I'll ask him to dimension that.
Oh, I don't think it would be 4 or 5
It's
feet.
not, it's more
The
like
railroad
3
ties
feet
are
or,
like 8 inches.
Yeah.
Or 6 inches. So if you have like five rows of railroad ties, that's like 30 inches.
This seems to be less than 3 foot high.
Yeah, but whatever it is, then the question is, if you're going to be planting in it, it has to be enough soil to support the thing, right? And the ties, we talked about this last time, that's why we wanted a section through it to understand exactly how it's going to be made, because the ties take up a lot of space, might leave only a foot for planting, and that's not going to work. So, you really need to bring the architect the next time. This is really bad to keep going back and forth like this, playing telephone tag.
Well,
Telephone
we were trying to respond. Originally, you had asked for them to be put in the ground. We looked into that option, and then our response was that we couldn't do that. So it's not that we haven't been trying to, I think we have been trying to make
Tell
progress.
us that it's going to be 3 feet high or something.
Okay.
That would probably be okay.
No, but then I still don't understand where there's going to be soil. If it's 3 feet high and the ties are 8 inches on each side,
No, each tie is 6 to 8 inches.
so it's 8 inches on each side.
No. But they have like a row of 5 of them
No,
stacked.
stacked, but I'm talking about the depth.
Of the area inside of the
Inside.
planters.
Right.
It would be the whole 3 feet.
No, it's the
3
width,
feet
you
wide
have the
by 3
tie on one side and the tie on the other side and the dirt in the middle. So in the end, you only have like, I don't know, 15 inches of soil,
Oh, that way.
right? How in the world you're gonna get a ball of a shrub to fit
Well, they may
there?
just put it straight against the building.
And then you have a drainage problem, right, which they complained about before, they're creating their own drainage problem. So that's why I wanted to understand what they're really doing, because I don't know that, I feel like this is gonna end up getting like little petunias, which is not what we had talked about. But this is the third submission with these drawings, right? Where there's not any information on the planter. So we keep asking for it, and if you just listen to the testimony.
It does have details, it just
No,
doesn't have
but
the height.
really, please, we've been asking for height, section, how it's going to be made, and
But I
we still
also-
haven't gotten it. It doesn't show it on here, it doesn't show height, and there's no sectional detail. And that's the thing, if I was talking to the architect, he or she would understand what a sectional detail is.
I mean,
and would have given
I
it to
understand what a
us.
sectional detail is. I definitely have listened to all the hearings and didn't understand that that was what was being asked for, and now I understand.
Okay.
Okay, and I think that was it.
What else? I think that was it. We're just trying to clarify this situation, right? So that you can make the installation, but to the point that Commissioner Chanda mentioned yesterday, rather than just waiting to begin on everything, you could begin on the other things on the list, installing the fence, all of those other things that are listed, removing the shed, adding the sound attenuation covers on the HVAC units. All that could be done now in between the next submission on the landscaping drawings. Get started, then you could show us photographs that you're making progress.
Okay. I mean, I think originally we were asked to submit a site maintenance plan of the work that was going to be done.
Right.
So that the work wasn't done piecemeal. So
Right.
now we're being told that we should show progress.
No, but so the point is, though, because we're only now talking about the plants, right? So there's all of this stuff that can be done prior to installing the plants, and by the way, it needs to be done prior to installing the plants. You can't put the fence in after the plants. The fence have to go in before the planting. So the sequencing is fine. Okay?
Okay.
Are there any speakers on this? Okay. All right. Could we put this on for June 27? Is that an approval? Yeah. It's small. Okay. So how about you come back to us with a submission on June 7? The submission is, and give us some explanation about why the plants that are selected, that where it explains how high they're going to, how high they're going to be when they start off, what their expected growth is, because that would require research, and then they could demonstrate to us some information about these plants, and that it will create a dense buffer so that they're aware that it's going to create a dense buffer, and that the ground cover type, whether it's this juniper that we were talking about or something else, is going to kind of withstand people going back there and using it as storage is really what.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, what was the date again?
June 27th.
27 and a 7
right?
submission.
All right, I just wanted to confirm that, sorry. Okay. What is this? Okay. Item number 5, 39560BZ, 2557 Linden Boulevard, Brooklyn.
Good morning again, Jessica Rubenstein on behalf of the applicant. I'll just wait a few minutes while the photos are being distributed.
That's the dumpster moved inside.
Correct.
Thank you.
So the dumpster has been moved inside the fence. The refrigerator has also been removed. The picture that we submitted was just showing the refrigerator next to the dumpster, showing it was going to be removed. And now you see the after picture. And
It's like string theory or.
exactly, we wanted to show you each step of the process. And then the last picture shows the Japanese red maple tree. So it's in bloom right now. We tried to get the picture yesterday. You see it's just kind of budding right now. And then the last picture shows what it will look like full grown. There was a question yesterday about why there were less trees depicted on the plans and less trees actually planted than were approved in 2012. And the reason is because the Japanese red maple tree expands to a spread of 20 feet. And because it's so wide, when the landscaper actually went to plant the trees, the space couldn't accommodate the amount of plants that were shown on the original approval. And this is as much as they could accommodate based on their expectation of how large the trees would grow to.
You know how long ago these were planted? Just
I think right after the last approval, so about 5 years
so
ago.
they kind of slow growing, but ultimately they
Yeah.
get fabulous.
I also
Okay.
printed out some information about the Japanese red maple. If you wanted to read it, I can pass it out. But it basically said that the Japanese red maple grows to a height of 15 to 25 feet and a spread of around 20 feet at maturity. I think it also says this tree grows at a slow to medium rate with height increases of anywhere from less than 12 inches to 24 inches per year. So that's why it's taking so long to grow.
Okay, that's very helpful, thank you. Anything else then? I think you responded to all the questions, thank you. Are there any speakers on this? So then, everybody okay that we can close this? Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to close.
Chair Promoter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown.
Aye.
And I'd like to make a motion to grant on condition, we've talked about these conditions many times, so the conditions are maintain the site graffiti-free, maintain and replace the fencing and landscaping as needed, no storage of cars awaiting service on the street, no car sales permitted on site. A reminder that this approval is for tax lot 27 only. That lot 25 that's adjacent is not included in this approval and is not to be used in conjunction with this use, right, which you know, and we've talked about it a lot. Okay, so on that motion to grant.
Chair Promoter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 6, 1255 ADBZ, 3533 31st Street, Queens.
Good morning, Sandy Anagnostou representing the applicant. I attended the review session yesterday. I noted the board's comments, which I would like to respond to. But before we do that, as we all know, this application hinges on the financial analysis. We did submit one when we filed the application, but it was for the subject the lot which was the subject of the original variance. Since then, 2 adjacent lots are in common ownership, and therefore we have to provide a new financial analysis, including those 2 additional lots. The property owner is currently in active litigation with the other party, and therefore we respectfully request additional time to prepare this financial analysis, which the property owner is willing to finance, because we don't know how long this litigation will take, and therefore, in order to move forward, he would like to finance this study. I spoke with the consultant who would need approximately 4 weeks, and the cost estimator would need about a week, so we can have this prepared within 5 to 6 weeks and submit it to the board. I realize we've had some 4 adjournments on this case, but I would respectfully request that the board consider granting these few weeks of time so that the applicant can respond to this. Otherwise, we would have to refile, and that would open him up to and have him subjected to paying additional filing fees, both at the building department and here at the board. And he's already invested a lot of time and money into this application. And so has the tenant who's trying to start a business here. Just asking that the board consider this. Mr. Robert Kessler, the property owner, is here to speak.
Okay, maybe it'd be good to hear from him.
Please state your name for the record.
Robert Kessler? Hi. Well, currently, we're in litigation with tenant, and the premise of the litigation is who's responsible to do this.
To do what?
To do the studies, the analysis, and continue with this application. So in the interim, I'm basically committed to take that expense to continue this so we don't have to restart again.
So let me ask you though, litigation, you're actually in litigation where you filed papers, you have an index number in court, and you're going to appear in court?
Yes.
So as you know, and you're interested in letting the court work this through the court process as opposed to settling at some point?
Well, we've been trying to settle it, but it's the issue of who is responsible to finance the
So,
proceedings.
as you know, because I'm sure you were advised by your attorney, the litigation can go on for a really, really long time, like literally years, right? And so in the meantime, there you have a vacant property, and you want to be able to get a return, right? So wouldn't there be a point where you might want to say, this isn't going to be my tenant anymore?
I seem to feel that the tenant is committed to continuing this, but in the interim, I'm willing to finance everything.
Right, but what I'm getting at is, let's just say the litigation gets nastier and nastier as litigation does, and at a certain point, you realize you actually don't want this to be your tenant, or it's never going to be resolved, or whatever. And this variance is for a very, very specific use, right? It's only for restaurant use. It's only for the layout that you've given us, right, or that's proposed. So if a different tenant comes in, this approval won't do you any good. If it's not the same kind of a restaurant, if it's a shoe store, it won't do you any good.
I understand that, but I mean, I'm just looking to continue this a little bit longer to see if we can resolve it and move forward with this.
Okay, understood. So as Mr. Agnostou heard in our discussion yesterday, the board has been waiting on the prosecution of this application since January of 2016, and the last time we actually heard it was a year ago. It's like the anniversary of the last time we heard it. And so we don't like to adjourn applications for such a long period of time. It's really bad for board practice and applicant practice. So what I would have to say is if the materials, unless there's objection from the other board members, if the materials are not fully completed and submitted within by the 6 weeks that we set, we will dismiss the application because we've been waiting too long and nobody told us about the reason for the delay for a year. Yeah, so this is actually one more adjournment than we normally permit. Okay? So you have to take this really seriously. If it's not
understand.
submitted by the date of submission and it's not complete, we will dismiss the application. Okay?
understand.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Are there any are we kind of adjourned?
Yeah, I think we adjourned that.
We kind of adjourned. Yeah. Did anybody have any other comments about
We
this?
had comments yesterday about the parking and
Right.
about the fire department review.
Were there any questions from you on those comments?
I heard the comments about fire department review of the Ansel system, looking at the second means of egress from the mezzanine, and just all the fire safety measures, fire alarm, sprinkler system. So it would have to be reviewed by the fire department. I also heard the chair's comment about the as-of-right submission that we made to consider putting the parking on the grade level rather than in the cellar, and that would maybe reduce the cost of the as-of-right. We'll look at that as well.
Okay. So we want an excellent, complete submission, so you need to have enough time. So is 8 weeks enough time to do this? I know you've calculated backwards on your financials, but I want you to also be ready with the modification. Because if you change the as-of-right, the financials for the as-of-right have to reflect that, right?
Correct, the parking.
So you need to have enough time to both change the as-of-right and then make sure the financials are reflective of that as-of-right, not to mention the proposed, right?
Yes, so, yes, 8 weeks.
To submit. Okay. Okay, anybody else have comments? So you listen, and you'll listen again to the videotape
Yes,
before you
absolutely.
submit to make sure you hit every point mentioned,
Yes.
okay?
Also, I did submit a letter from the property owner's attorney.
Oh,
It was done yesterday, May
Oh, okay.
1st, so
Maybe we didn't-
it's in the record.
okay, maybe we didn't see it.
Next time around.
Yeah, okay. So that would put us at the beginning of August for, a submission at the beginning of August. Does that work? Or at the end of July for an August hearing? Okay, so how about a submission on July, all right, this works, 1, 2, 3, on August 2nd for an August 22nd hearing? Your last hearing,
Yes,
right?
we understand that. Thank you.
Item number 7, 23501BZ, 2009 Mermaid Avenue, Brooklyn.
Jessica Rubenstein on behalf of the applicant. We ask that we please have about 6 weeks to submit.
Okay. So that puts us, again, how about that same schedule?
The June 7th and
No, 6 weeks to submit is the end of June, is for, like, a submission for, I'm just working backwards. So an August 8th hearing would give you a submission on July 19th. It's a
Okay.
little more than 6.
that works, thank you.
Okay. August 8th for a July 19th submission.
Okay. Item number 8, 301BZ, 1502 Avenue N, Brooklyn.
Jessica Rubenstein on behalf of the applicant. We wanted to inform the board that last night the applicant paid the outstanding ECB fine for $1,600. Proof of that is within the email that you see before you. the final price ended up being over $2,000 just because of interest and credit card fees and things like that.
Great, okay, so that's the indication that the fine was paid, great. And I think everything else was done, right? Okay, so then I'd like to make are there any speakers on this? I'd like to make a motion to close.
Chair Promoter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda?
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
And a motion to grant.
Chair Promoter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda?
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Which one? Opposed or in favor? Yes. Elected officials, you can also sign here. New cases, item number 9, 41850BZ, 7369 217th Street, 7336 Springfield Boulevard, 21902 74th Avenue, and 7310 220th Street, Queens.
We'll waive the reading of the other addresses. Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Stuart Klein, Klein Slowick on behalf of the applicant, WOTC. I reviewed yesterday's tape. I apologize, there seemed to have been a number of questions that I was rather surprised by. Either the application itself was rather cryptic, or I didn't do a terribly good job of explaining some of the issues. But these are the facts. This was an application, a variance granted in 1950 for an area comprising approximately 40 acres, 1.7 million square feet. It was granted under the 1916 zoning resolution as amended under 7H and Section 21. It allowed for 499 two-family houses, and there was some discussion of that in the record. One agency found it to be a multiple dwelling, another agency found it to be a series of two-family houses. The plot itself, prior to the zoning variance grant, was mapped out and approved by the City Planning Commission. The grant allowed for the construction of the homes, which were ultimately built in 1952.
Excuse me, Mr. Klein, could you move the mic a little closer?
Sorry, sure.
Some people say they can't hear.
Yeah, maybe speak up.
Yeah.
Use your full
That's
projection
never happened
voice.
before. Okay.
Yeah, use your angry voice.
Okay, well, that's an easy one to default to. It allowed for 735 cars, 340 of them were garaged, and 390 of them, 5 of them were for open spaces. The grant resolved 3 objections. One were the number of buildings per lot. The second was on-site parking, which was not allowed in the D zone under the 1916 zoning resolution. And the third was a waiver for yard and lot requirements. Included in the grant, as you know, and which was the major subject of yesterday's discussion, was a 100-foot wide green area that bordered the southern side of the property north of existing homes on 77th Street. The current application seeks the addition of 98 cars, as well as a rather modest 5,000 square foot, not 7,500, 8,000, as depicted in some of the opposition papers, that will be restricted to use by the 3,000 residents on site. We have the architect here with a series of boards to go over to fully explain what the project consists of. With regard to the drawings, the actual build-out itself, they were contained in L100 of the proposed plan, originally submitted in 2014, and 1.01. By its very nature, the reduction in space is going to consist of approximately a little less than 4% of the entire area. So if we compare that to anything, that is literally adding something like 28 feet to the 1,448-foot high Empire State Building. So it's certainly not a major alteration. That I was accused of not having read the prior file. I did. I read all of the documents that led into the application before the board. One must remember that the original zoning resolution that was passed in 1916 was only about 13 pages long. As amended, at the time of this was issued, it had expanded all the way to 85 pages. Currently, it's a little over 3,900 pages. And before the architect takes the lectern and speaks to what the exact layout is, I would just simply suggest that this is a 70-year-old application. The ethos and the layout and the mindset of the board that that led to this variance has significantly changed. The area has changed, and the zoning resolution has changed. As a matter of fact, the zoning resolution since 1961 has been amended on average approximately once a day, or otherwise 18,000 different amendments. I would suggest to the board that as the zoning changes, the city changes, and these changes sometimes are merited, sometimes aren't merited, sometimes are done out of greed, sometimes are done out of convenience. In this particular circumstance, it is done out of necessity. The president of the board is here today. He will explain to you why the need for this particular expansion. I would address one final point, and that is that the rather modest community center will accommodate only people from the community, and it is not going to be used for banquets. It only has 2 pantries. It will have no cooking on site. It would only be warming food. Other than that, I will turn to the other members of the group who came here today to explain, probably better explain than I did in the application, exactly what it is we're seeking and the current situation that the as-built presents to us. If you have any questions?
Have questions.
Sure.
So you talked about the time that has elapsed since then and so on, but at the same time, this is a modification of an existing variance as opposed to a new variance, right? So we are bound by the determination of the board back in the day, right? So back in 1950. And the board clearly had a reason for spending so much time discussing a 100-foot wide buffer area with a fence around it where no one was permitted to enter, not even locating a park bench. And you need to address why this board should consider modifying that board's clear concerns and to help us understand what those clear concerns were, and why elimination of it, just let me finish, why elimination of what was clearly very important, because it takes up a very large part of the resolution, why that should be allowed to be modified on an amendment of a variance as opposed to a new variance.
Okay, let me address that this way. The mindset of the board at the time was described by Article 21 and 7H. It had different standards for 7221, and I believe the overall rationale for doing this was to make sure that there was a sufficient buffer zone between the homes on 77th Avenue and this particular location. It is my position and our arborist position and our architect's position that while some of the areas being taken away, the modifications that are going to be made to it are probably going to be a greater benefit to those homes than the current 100-foot wide greenstone. I think much of the aggravation over this is the fact that it's going to be a build-out. It's going to be built out over time. I know I'm living right next to construction where Long Island Hospital used to be. It's being done as of right. I'm not particularly happy about it, but it's going to have a build-out, which is going to materially affect myself and my neighbors. But I don't think that the special order calendar and the laws that govern the change in prior variances is so fixed in stone as if to render nugatory the ability to change variances. You have the right to change it. I think we have to look at it through different eyes that are now 70 years older. But many of the things that plagued the original application, such as distance from public transportation and other things of that nature, require changes be made on site. As I said in my application, the amount of cars in the neighborhood has increased. And as a matter of fact, my blog was I did quote from the blog correctly. I'll be more than happy to submit to that board. And in fact, those numbers have changed and still changing on an upward arc. So I believe that the fact that you have the right to change the variance and alter the variance means that you're not necessarily, that the prior grant is not fixed in stone. And if we could show to you that the new iteration of the green space is as good, or if not better, than the old space, I think we meet that requirement.
Okay, let's see what you
Okay.
show us.
Should I bring up the architect?
Please.
Thank you.
Sign in his name.
There's these magnet strips on the top there that'll help you mount it higher, maybe for people to be able to see. I don't know if the foam core might be too thick for it to work, but it'd be good. So it's blocked by the podium for a few of us. Yeah, that's better.
That's going to hold it.
No, they're not. It's better for paper. Never mind.
I can hold them up if,
Okay.
Maybe just put them in front of the podium or something, maybe that'll work as you go
Yeah,
along.
okay, it's just the podium's in the way for a few of us, so, and, so maybe when you're talking about a particular one, you move it to the front of the podium.
Sure.
But it's foam core, it works with those things?
Does? Oh, I'm sorry.
So, yeah, go ahead. Because I think it's better if the community can see, so Ryan, who's an expert in this subject, will...
We're city planning person, so.
Look at that.
Ah, there you
Yeah,
go.
look at that, the two corners, okay. And then?
There you go.
Thank you, Assistant Executive Director.
Nothing like a pro.
pressure now.
Takes a lot of practice. Don't be nervous, it's okay, it's your first time.
I'm used to doing this.
It needs more of an angle, yeah. There you go.
You get the feeling that he created all these things.
Yes.
One more.
This is the city planning secret.
Yeah, exactly. They don't have it at Landmark.
Yeah, it's useful, very simple.
Okay.
That might be good. and, hello. So you can take the mic in your hand and then state your name, please.
Move that mic up a bit,
Yeah.
Sorry about the delay. My name is Salvatore Croce. I'm the architect for this project. I can walk you through the boards. First board, sheet A00, we have just a small rendering of what the clubhouse will look like at the parking area. Drawing L-1, hopefully that works. So this is this grayed out area is the location of the said building, which is approximately 1,000 feet off of Springfield Boulevard. L-1.3 is a before and after photo of the green space here that we're the 100-foot buffer zone, and then the proposed the proposal for the clubhouse and the driveway and garages. So it's just showing you what more or less the green area that will be modified there. Okay, so this is a blow-up of the proposal where we have the 5,000 square foot community building here, the enclosed parking area, and then the open parking area leading out to Springfield Boulevard.
Sorry, the enclosed parking area, that was one of the questions we had. What is proposed? Is it all new open parking, or is there parking garages that are proposed?
It's a mixture of both.
Oh.
So 39 spots will be enclosed and roofed, backing up to an existing enclosed and roofed parking garage. And then fronting that would be the additional 59 open parking spaces.
Why are 39 spaces being enclosed and roofed?
It was just part of the original design with the client.
So this was the client requested that you have this?
Well, it's more of providing a balance between enclosed and not enclosed to the tenants to the owners of the corporation.
So in other words, to offer them either an enclosed or
Exactly.
an open parking lot? Okay.
Exactly.
And then how many are in the open? 50?
59, including around the turnaround circle area.
Excuse me, since you already have like a roadway between the two existing garages, why do you need another roadway?
Sorry, where would the roadway be?
There's two long lanes of enclosed garages with a roadway in between them.
So the question Commissioner Munton is asking, please show us where the existing enclosed parking garage is. Okay.
There.
Right
How
there.
does one access that currently?
Through, there's a driveway on 75th.
Okay, so the question the Commissioner is asking is, why couldn't that same driveway be used for this new facility that you're proposing?
Instead of
Instead of creating a new one off Springfield?
Okay, so here we are, 75th, I don't know if you can see
Yeah.
there. 75th Avenue here is the curb cut for the existing garage area. In order to get to the front of these garages, you're coming through 75th and accessing this area.
The existing is actually slightly above.
Further
Yeah,
back.
yeah, so the proposed is backing up to the existing.
Right, but
Right.
there is a roadway there that you can go through
And
with
extend.
garages on either side of you, just about up to where the proposed building would be, without going through the green area.
Right, why do you, the whole issue is, what's the purpose of that, the real purpose of that snaking road from Springfield?
Well, to eliminate another 98 cars that would be using this area.
But
That's
this
a
is
different
the,
issue,
but-
whether or not there would be 98 cars, but
Okay.
well, I do have a concern. It's like this is, if this is for the community, it's going to be mostly the residents within the community that is going to be parking. So you're not anticipating that many vehicles coming from outside. So it's only the local vehicles that will be circulating within the facility. Why do you need to take them out onto the Springfield and then again bring them back to this if this is going to be just for the community?
And if you think about how people use cars, like for shopping, for example, cars loaded up with stuff, you pull in front of your house, you unload, and then you're on the property already, so then you drive to your parking spot. It doesn't actually make sense for you to leave the compound.
Well, I would have to confirm the required dimensions for fire department access and bring.
Fire department access to,
Well, part of the reason why we have the turnaround here is for emergency vehicles to come in, circulate out,
Well,
and
for
drive back out.
what? They already can get to the
Right.
location because there's housing right there. The same way that they put out the fire for those houses.
Sir, no, we have to keep questions here, and you can, I mean, oh.
Could he comment on this one point?
Oh.
Oh, you're part of the applicant
Oh, you're
group.
part of the applicant.
Oh,
I thought
yeah,
you were
sure.
just- yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
The reason being for
No, sorry,
Yeah,
there's
we go to the mic,
protocol which your
identify
counsel
yourself.
should advise you. You have to come to the mic, state your name, and then you can speak.
Hi, I'm Ron Delarme. I'm one of the board members who had proposed and requested for this project.
Sorry, say again your name?
Ron Delarme, I'm a board member. One of the reasons for this secondary access, means of access, was to eliminate most of the traffic that's already pre-existing for the residents that are entering and exiting out of this parking area. The second means of, would be for ease of access to this facility, being that it's off of a main road.
But if the facility is to be used by the residents exclusively, why do you need a separate entrance? Wouldn't they, for instance, if I'm going to play cards at the clubhouse, wouldn't I just probably walk to the clubhouse from within the compound? Or if I'm disabled, maybe I would drive, but only from my house up there over down there?
Sure, but this is exclusive use for the residents.
Correct.
Residents would be allowed to utilize this for events. So if they have events, they will have guests, which guests will be allowed to use
So
as
this is
parking.
really guest parking is what
It's
you're
guests
talking about.
and residents primarily.
Well, how much of it is guest parking and how much
It's
of it is resident?
all would be for guests, I mean, for residents.
Sorry.
Okay.
Hi,
State your name.
Ron Kay, President of Windsor Oaks. Let me just clarify something. 'cause
So are
it's-
you, sorry, does that mean you're a board member too?
I'm President of the board, yes. I think we're getting, if you look at our overall application, it's for the clubhouse and additional parking and garages, which is badly, badly needed in the community. It's not just about the clubhouse parking. This is for resident parking. We have a garage waiting list over 2.5 years in backlog with 207 people waiting on that garage list. So that's why we propose enclosed garages. That's the first thing. In addition, we need parking. We are, in 1950, everyone was lucky if they had one car. Today, we have families with 3 and 4 cars. We just don't have enough parking. And as you will hear from people that actually will come up later, the same people that complain about parking now, now they say we have enough parking, which is just not the truth. We have 4 and 5 times more cars than we did in 1950. This is parking for the residents on a daily basis, not just if you're going to the clubhouse. And in this section, B section we call it, is the largest section of the 4 sections we have on the property.
So then
So the
maybe-
parking is actually more needed than even a clubhouse. We need parking and garages.
Okay, so then maybe now you have to answer the same exact
Sure.
question that I asked Mr. DeLearn. If this is parking for the residents who are claiming that they don't have, who are demanding spaces, you have 207 people on your waiting list, and I live in the middle or towards the top, and I go shopping and I have my groceries and I drive into my house and I drop off my groceries, why would I want to leave the premises, drive down Springfield, and come back inside? Wouldn't I rather do what everybody else is doing, which is drive to my parking space wherever it is on the premises?
Okay, so I don't know if there's been a visual inspection of the site, but when you get to that area, there's not, for a fire engine to get back to where the additional,
We're not talking about the fire engines, we're talking about me. I just dropped off my packages at my house, and I want to go park.
okay.
So why would I want to now leave the whole compound? Wherever I leave, I might be leaving, I don't remember the name
Well,
of the
we have that, with all due respect, we have 9 parking lots in existence today. People park wherever they can find a spot, drop their car, okay, ease of access,
You don't
so.
have assigned parking
We
space.
do not have assigned parking because we have rent-stabilized tenants. So back when we converted, it's a first-come, first-serve basis. We were not allowed to take that system away, and we have that in effect today. The garages are a per-month rental, so you will pay for the garages, but that's a separate, and that's always been the case. So that will continue with the new garages.
So those are assigned space. In other words, you pay.
Parking, garages
and you have-
enclosed is assigned, correct.
Okay, so, but my question still stands. So my question is still, I drop my stuff off, I, hallelujah, managed to get one of these spaces that I have to pay for. It's inside parking, arguably. Why do I want to drive to the north, out of the complex, drive all the way around the block down Springfield to come back into the compound when I could easily just make a right and another, maybe not even a right, a left or a right, and go straight down into my parking?
Okay, I mean, I could see your point as well, and again, we've asked for several meetings to sit down with various recommendations and compromise, but we've been turned down at every turn. So if...
Sorry, who have you been turned down by?
Please, no comments from...
I don't mean the board, I mean the residents.
I don't understand. Don't you represent the community, the board?
I'm not talking about our residents, I'm talking about the residents on 77th Road, plus a handful of our residents that are
Sorry, where the
here.
residents on 77th Road is outside of the complex?
Outside of the complex.
So what's that have to do with how you're planning,
Because,
whether you
again,
have parking on the inside?
Again, we are willing to compromise on various issues. If it means not having an entrance on Springfield Boulevard, and it's feasible to get a turnaround, I would leave that to the architects. I mean, we're not opposed to that, okay? But again, that's just a matter of an entrance on Springfield Boulevard. We still would need the area for the parking. I mean, that's the key, is the parking.
Well, you're looking for parking space.
Right.
But we're trying to understand why in the world you have a separate entrance from Springfield, and the answer is you don't need...
Again, I don't have a good, I'm willing, that's something that we came up with the design. If there's something that needs to be changed on the design and it's feasible, that's something we're willing to look at.
But this clubhouse with this banquet area is increasing the demand for parking, the way I see it.
Okay, well, if you're with it, it's going to hold 60 people, the banquet room. I mean, okay, it's for a kid's party, a confirmation, a graduation. If someone does come from the outside, that entrance would have been easier to access on Springfield. If we need to direct them through another one of our existing entrances, I don't think we're opposed to that. That's fine. Again, it's a banquet hall. I don't know, I mean, I personally would not call it a banquet hall. It's got, heating, microwaves, and it's got a capacity for 60 people, and that's what we'll enforce. So there will be some extra cars when there is a outside party, but on an everyday use, it would not be extra cars from outside the development.
What do you mean an outside party?
Like, in other words, if I threw a party for a child and I had my grandmother come and my mother, and they don't live on the property, they would come to visit and they would need a place to park as well.
But isn't that true? Everybody throws parties at their houses, right? You always have.
Correct, and we have a parking problem. That's why, and we have a
Right.
severe parking problem. We don't have just a minor parking problem. We have a severe parking issue in our development. And have for years.
I think it would be extremely
Please
helpful.
be quiet. Please don't talk.
I think thus far the documents that's been provided does not substantiate that argument. So you need to provide us with that information in terms of indicating where the current parking spaces are, how many spaces there are, what is the capacity, what is the utilization, and if you're saying there is over parking, there must be parking somewhere else. Then if they are parking beyond your 7 parking spaces, maybe those could be reconfigured for parking spaces.
We've taken away pretty much all the areas we could take away, given a couple of additional ones we've
That is
located.
more than what the plan approved.
I'm saying in general, I mean, other than going and knocking down buildings, I mean, we are pretty much out of parking
But your
area.
parking supply is actually the garages, and when you say there's 207 people on the waiting list, they're on the waiting list only for a garage.
That's a garage. Yeah, everything else is first come, first
And what
served.
is the monthly rental on that?
$100.
I would use it as a storage place.
You're not allowed. That's against the rules.
How do you monitor that?
Inspections, if we go and see people that can't, the rule says you have to be able to park a car in there. I mean, there are also fire concerns if you use it for storage versus, so we have other issues that, append upon that. But they sign an agreement that they're going to stick to the rules, and, we monitor as best we can.
So you have your garages, you have your on-site parking, which you can expand by 31 spaces. And then all the street system within there, which has no parking regulations, that's also your parking supply.
Absolutely, it's still not enough.
So we don't really have an idea of how many on-street spaces there are.
Okay, we can get,
I believe that and all along Alley Pond Park.
again, we will also, one of the things is to get cars off the streets too and into our development.
But
Okay,
everybody parks
but-
on the street.
Okay, and you know how many complaints we get because people break into cars on Springfield Boulevard?
Wait,
That's
can
a
I
big-
just say something?
I'm sorry.
Can I haven't had a chance to speak. I would like to speak.
Okay, surely.
I think part of the problem here is that you're coupling your clubhouse with the parking. And because it's traveling together as a group kind of proposal, it's making it very hard to place both of them on this large property. And I think that if you decouple them, then you probably would be able to find space for parking within that community that's above the buffer zone, and also space for a clubhouse that's supposed to only serve the community. And you probably wouldn't have to be into the buffer zone at all. And I think that would allay half of your opposition's fears, which is the diminution of the green area that they would like to block. I mean, they're a low-rise, low-density neighborhood, and they really want to be blocked from this
And
situation.
I'm not saying that that's not the case, but if you look at our plan, and I did have prepared remarks too, but if you look at our plan, I mean, what's there now are deciduous shrubs that have been there for God knows how long.
Otherwise
Okay.
known as trees.
What?
Trees.
There are some trees, but for the most part, it's deciduous, and we have a landscape report that details actually tagged each tree. We're going to be replacing it with evergreens that actually will give them better screening. Now, that's just a fact. It will be better screening.
It's not, if you're reducing 100 feet down to 20 feet and 15 feet, you're not going to be substituting the amount of noise attenuation that you would get from having a 100-foot distance to any kind of activity.
But also, it depends how it's strategically placed, the
Even
trees.
if you put evergreen trees back there, you're still going to have
One more second.
spaces.
Okay, I can appreciate that, but the trees, again, if you look there and you see what it looks now, you can see right through to their houses right now. This will be an evergreen. And again, what we're proposing is not the entire buffer zone. I mean, there is, I don't know, 200 between
It's
Springfield
half
and...
the buffer
It's
zone.
about 40% or somewhat.
So getting back to the point which you may not be aware of the subtleties here, this was a subject of a variance in 1950, and in order for this board to be able to allow any changes at all, it needs to respect the conditions that were imposed by the board in 1950. If it doesn't do that, if it's being asked to look at something afresh, then it's a brand-new variance, and you would have to make a case that you wouldn't be able to make, that you can't realize a reasonable return on your investment without, not to mention all those houses that are already there, but the clubhouse and the parking and so on, and I doubt you would be able to succeed on a variance like that. So we need to stay within the confines of what was approved, and the issue of what was approved was heavily conditioned on this very large buffer area. And so far, the testimony hasn't persuaded us that you can't accomplish what you want to have, which is more parking and a clubhouse, without touching the buffer area. None of the materials that we provided, many of us are architects, engineers, we know how to do this, right? So we look at that site plan and we say, I would just put the clubhouse right over there, right on the site. And if necessary, I'd tear down some of the interior parking and I'd move that over to another location and put the clubhouse right where I want it on the property. So
We can't do that because we have rent stabilization.
you have laws, but you can put the, well, for one, the rent stabilized tenants you just told us don't have parking garages unless they pay.
No, they're to pay, but they're also.
Right, but you can relocate it while it's under construction, you can relocate them. There's ways to get around this to make space on your lot by relocating parking. And it looks like you haven't pursued that, and as was pointed out by opposition counsel, who will eventually speak, the study that you made that shows the little dots that shows a few places to put parking, scatter, the fact that it's only in one little area implies to all of us that you didn't look at the other areas, right? So, so far we don't see a case for removing a condition that was obviously very important to the board in 1950.
And I respect that, but with all due respect, I've been on the board for 20 years, okay? I was born in this place, okay? So I love this place very much, okay? And in the 20 years, we have done and added spots where applicable. I know you believe there are other spots that we can come up with, but I would welcome you to come on out and show us.
No, you have to demonstrate to us, that's the point.
But what I'm saying is, we have looked at that just on a irrespective of the clubhouse and that project, of where we could add parking. And we have taken over additional spots where we could. There's just not as many additional spots as you may believe. It's not something we can't go back and look at one more time and come back to the board and give them a count on the street parking as well. But this is a serious issue, irregardless of this project that's been ongoing for many, many years, is a parking problem. We have that. Again, 1950, 1 car. Today, 4 cars. 1950, no computers. Today, you all have computers. I mean, it's an advancement. It's a change. We have to go with the times in some respect to say, where can we do that? And we're willing to work with the opposition to try and see where we can get common ground. Unfortunately, they didn't want to sit down with attorneys, and we are a corporation. We offered to pay for half of their legal fees for a meeting. They refused that as well. It's a problem because, we were willing to sit down and see where we can come up with, common, where we need to tweak. If certain people want more screening here versus there, we're willing to do that. But again, if you can never sit down with people, it's hard to get to that point.
I'd like to make just 1 or 2 brief comments. Number one, I think you're to some extent mischaracterizing the 50 resolution. You're not locked into the fixed parking. What we're locked into, and I think the board is locked into, is the purpose of that. And it is my belief that we accomplish...
The fixed parking? Sorry, what?
Well, the purpose of the green space. If in fact the purpose of the green space was to serve as a buffer zone, and modern technology allows us to have a smaller buffer zone, then the intent of the board back in 1950, I would suggest to you, was brought forward.
What's the modern technology?
Well, the different sized trees, the different spacing, arborists have come up with all types of things, different walls. I mean, the fact of the matter is, the 16 resolution did not recognize DB walls, which are now a standard design implement in all buildings. Things have changed, and I think it is our job to show you that whatever we arrive at is going to accomplish the same thing that the board wanted to accomplish in 1950.
I'm not sure that the board just wanted to accomplish sound attenuation.
Yeah,
I believe they wanted a natural buffer. And I think to say that a sound attenuated wall is the equivalent in terms of quality buffering for a neighborhood that's used to a low density area. Don't interrupt me. Let me finish speaking. It's just not appropriate. It's not an even exchange. And then also to make a comment that you're offering to pay for the opposition's legal fees, but they don't want to sit and come to the table with you Why would they? What you're suggesting is a lose-lose for them. They have a 100-foot buffer that's in place by this board, and all you're doing is telling them that you want to reduce that, and they should come to the table happily and go, oh, you're paying our legal
What
fees.
I'm not
I
saying
don't
that.
understand this.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying
Well, your
that-
team is saying this.
Okay, I apologize. I am saying that, first of all, I cannot go back in time 70 years and understand what was on the mind of the board. All I could do is look at Section 21 and 7H and find out what those two sections required, which were not in the original 1916 code. They were added. So I have to look at what the intent of that was and see how much it was used to drive the 100-foot buffer zone. To be perfectly candid with you, I believe that we can accomplish something, either redistribution, replacement, or whatever, that's not going to have a material impact on that buffer zone. Just simply to call it a buffer zone without describing what that the purpose of that buffer zone is not giving full voice to what probably the board had on its mind in 1950. That's number one. Number two, the purpose of the zoning resolution, one of the driving forces of the zoning resolution since 1961 and its 18,000 amendments, is to bring as much parking off-street as possible. As of right, we're allowed to have 898 spaces. We're going to fall well short of that, even with these additional spaces. So we are right now talking about two separate narratives, which hopefully will come together. We're talking about adhering to the new zoning resolution, recognizing the demand for parking, which has increased significantly over the last 30 or 40 years, and respecting our neighbors and trying to put together a buffer zone that affords the same protection and the same visual prospect and the same aesthetics as that which was submitted and approved in 1950. If we can accomplish all of those tasks, I think we should be granted change.
There is no requirement that you comply with the current zoning resolution.
No, I'm not saying there's not a requirement.
Right, so
I'm saying that zoning resolution recognizes the fact that on-site parking is most of the time, if not a necessity, a preferred position. And it's our belief that not only is it a preferred position under the current zoning resolution, but it is a necessity based on demand.
Well,
But
but
lack of adequate parking is a problem throughout New York City in almost every neighborhood.
That's why the zoning resolution was changed to try and accommodate that.
No, actually, the zoning resolution was changed to reduce the amount of parking in many areas.
In many areas, not in this one.
Well, we have many applications on many parts of the city where people complain there isn't adequate parking, to reduce the amount of parking based on the use, based on the type of housing, for example.
And I understand, I apologize.
Okay.
And I understand that, but those are in particular situations. The building code allows that if you're going to have less than a certain number of cars required, somewhere between 5 and 10, the building department can waive the requirement of
For
cars.
example.
But in other circumstances, where you have 40 acres or 1.7 million square feet of space, and no public transportation in the area, I believe it's beneficial to have as many on-site parking spaces as possible. And if we haven't proven that to you before,
not.
I think
Well,
it's our position to do it now.
On-site actually includes your entire internal street system.
That's correct. But
So I
our-
don't think you've told us how many available
Well,
on-street
we
spaces
will,
there
but
are.
I will caution you on one thing, and that is we have to take into account when we do that, turning radii of fire engines, and while we would love to have you come and play cards, you're not a member, so you can't use the house. If you park on the street, you conceively block passage of emergency vehicles. So we will put that into our report.
We don't have any information on the size of streets, nothing.
I will do that. I will absolutely
And
do that. There's no
along,
question.
all along Alley Park. When I visited, there was like there was nobody parked there.
We'll,
And I found parking spaces throughout the site.
Mr. Rothkrug is here today. He will, if he can't address that today, we will put together the appropriate analysis.
Are there no parking signs on these interior streets?
No.
I don't know.
There aren't any parking regulations.
Because there are no parking regulations either imposed by the fire department or by the board, so by the board of directors.
Well, no, the fact that they're posted or not posted doesn't mean that there are no regulations.
What
I
is the
mean,
word?
I've seen thousands of instances where the fire department
So my
doesn't
question
post
is
regulations.
there parking permitted on these streets? On 75th
I would imagine Ron
Avenue?
would best be able to answer that.
Yes, there is, but I would also ask the commissioner, when you visited the property, was it during the day, was it at night? When was?
Well, I would appreciate a survey at night.
Absolutely, we will do that.
We'll do that.
I was just saying,
All
you
the
made the
parking
comments, there was plenty
spaces
of
and all
parking.
the spaces on the street and the long alley.
So as I said before, we will take a look at this, we will take your advice, we will speak to staff, we will supply whatever we believe is appropriate in the circumstances, but I really don't like the idea that we're fixed in time from something that happened 70 years ago. The city is constantly changing, constantly processing, and if we could fulfill the obligations that the board had in 1950 by changing the design and prove that to you scientifically, then I think we should be allowed to proceed.
So there's a lot, you talked about how, things have changed in 70 years. One of the things that's changed, though, in 1950, I know they were aware of it also, is more and more awareness of the value of green space. More and more awareness that impermeable areas are damaging the watershed. More and more awareness of the need for trees to produce oxygen. More and more of all of that. Actually, if anything, this is a time period when the idea of green space is actively promoted in public policy. So the idea of, in Joni Mitchell's words, tearing down the forest and putting up a parking lot is actually, now incorporated into public policy that this is a bad idea, right? So the idea that you would...
It's a bad idea
Stop
if it's-
interrupting.
I'm sorry.
So the idea that your proposal goes right after the green space, because that seems to be some developable spot on the property, again, isn't addressing the real question, which is, you need more parking. You looked around on the lots, and this is what you found. And by the way, there's no requirement that you find all those parking spaces. That's a question of convenience for you. And if you want a clubhouse, there's no requirement that you have a clubhouse, but that there are probably places where you can, certainly places that you can put it on site, and that hasn't been studied, and we haven't seen any of it. Yeah?
I also want to add that it's an interesting thought that you would target this green space and clear it, which is green space that your cooperators probably rely on less than the people in your surrounding neighborhood. And if you're really serious about providing more parking to the residents, you probably should think about solving it within your own community in areas that's not a no development zone. So if you're going to get rid of green space, perhaps you should consider some of the green space that's within your development that's not in that area.
We have done that many times over, and there's just...
Because, I mean, I'm seeing
We will-
little snippets of where you could put spaces, but there are also other areas, if you look at the aerial, that are loads of areas that are treed. Now, I'm not advocating getting rid of mature trees, but I'm just saying that if you're going to get rid of trees to solve your parking problem, maybe it should be trees that are really wholly your trees that you can destroy.
Let me make a couple of comments. One, I apologize, I was told to use my angry voice before. That normally comes with interrupting. I apologize for that. Number two, I understand your sentiments, and it is my position, and it'll be for us to prove that we can do this, whether it's in this particular location or a different iteration of it or a different location. We have the obligation to prove that what we take down and what we replace it with accomplishes the same thing as what the board was striving to achieve in 1950. But I think just simply drawing a line in the sand and saying 100 feet is antithetical to the idea that things change and things change and can be approved at the same time. So I would just like to have the opportunity to do that.
If you wanted to build a clubhouse, you'd have to come to us no matter where you were going to put it, right?
I don't know, I'm not sure of that.
Yes.
I think
Because
so.
it's-
You're
it's-
the
it's an
subject of a variance.
Explore putting it in a different location.
But, well, we can, but under,
Because we will probably consider
under
that
Article 3 of
favorably.
the 1916 zoning resolution, accessory uses were allowed, and I suspect that this would violate the then zoning resolution, but then variance if we didn't put it within the green space.
Sorry, excuse me.
Yeah.
This is a subject of a variance, and any change to the site at all requires return to the board, even if it were only what we call a letter of substantial compliance, that the scope of the proposed change doesn't impact the original grant. So you actually should not be arguing this anymore because that's incorrect.
I've been arguing this for about 30 years with Jay Siegel. His side seems to be winning, but I will still struggle on in my efforts. But once again, there are other locations in the neighborhood because there were mass of these built after the Second World War. We are seriously disadvantaged by not having a clubhouse on site. And I will...
That has not been demonstrated to us either.
Well, actually, I'm prepared to demonstrate it today. And I have the printouts.
Let's hear it.
Well, you have the two that was cited by the opposition was Park and Bell is the other one?
It's
Bell
your
Manor.
right, it's your presentation. If you're going to make an
Well,
argument,
okay, fine.
then you can't.
I have with me two, if you'll bear with me a second. Can I get it from my stack? Fine, thank you. Two areas similar post-war town garden homes that were cited by the opposition. One was Bell Park, and is having no such community house. And in their promo on the blog, it says that there is also a clubhouse and retirees club located on our property. It has over 700 parking spaces as well. The other location was in Windsor Park, which has 2,000 vehicles on site, a large exercise and community room for events for residents. So those are the two that are cited by the opposition as not having community houses, when in fact they advertise in the blog that they do, and it is a major draw for those particular locations.
Okay, so here's the thing.
Yeah.
You can't be giving us this little piecemeal bits of this and this. If you're going to try to make your case, you need to give us detailed information about all the developments in the area that have and don't have clubhouses.
I will.
What the clubhouses are. You're proposing something very specific that's got a little 60-person catering facility, et cetera, and guest parking with a separate entrance from Springfield. You would need to demonstrate that that's what they have. We don't know that it's not just the ground floor of one of the houses that's their community.
It's a very fair comment, I'll do that. Okay? Do you want the architect back up again, or?
I don't know, it's your presentation.
I don't think so, to tell you the truth. I suspect that we understand what it is you're looking for, and our parking consultant is here. Would you like to speak to Mr. Rothberg, or?
Well, he was supposed to have done a study, so I'm not sure what he's going to talk about.
Morning, Hiram Rothberg. So our study was actually done to show that the clubhouse and the traffic generated by the clubhouse wouldn't have an impact along Springfield Gardens Road. So that was what our study was really meant to do, to show that curb cut and the cars coming in and going out would have no significant impact on that particular road.
But you analyzed it as a community club where all the patrons would drive to the
We analyzed...
Because you have like 86 vehicle trips per day.
Correct. We took everything from the secret technical manual, table 16.2. So we took the rates for community facility centers in addition to rates for residential parking rates.
So this would generate a demand of 43 spaces.
Correct.
So that's 43 additional spaces.
Out of the 98.
Out of the 98, in addition to the spaces needed by the residents in the compound?
It's all, yes, it was combined.
No, that's what I mean. So I'm trying to understand. Does the facility itself generate 43 new spaces? Or is it, are they the same cars that would otherwise be situated on site?
We separated out the trips to the community facility center and the trips by residents for parking. So we didn't take into account any link trips. In other words, cars coming from different areas within the facility to come to the community facility.
Okay, but the way it's reading now is we need 43 new parking spaces to accommodate the clubhouse, right?
Right.
Right.
Which is not what the representatives from the board are saying the parking is for. They're saying it's to meet the needs of the 200-something people who are on a waiting list for parking.
Correct. So what we have to do further is we have to try to break out exactly how many of those trips to the community facility center are by residents of the facility itself, of the neighborhood. Just to get a more accurate number to show that, in other words, we don't want to assume that all those trips are coming from outside the community to a community facility center, since, that's the, as Mr. Kay stated, I mean, we have an occupancy of 60. The general use of that community facility center on a daily basis will be for card games, different functions within the facility itself. And then he also went on that, sometimes when there's a little birthday party or some other kind of event, there will be cars coming from outside of the community.
Okay.
But to say that the facility would generate 43 spaces is a little, it's not, we have to break it down further. Again, our original analysis was based on the fact that the community facility center, in addition to the accessory parking people provided, would have no impact on Springfield Gardens Road.
Okay, so you were concerned about the parking impact on Springfield, not in terms of...
That's correct. And I will say about car ownership, just in the last year alone, according to the census data for this particular census tract, car ownership increased by 7.8%. And car ownership has been increasing in this particular area year after year after year.
But in reality, if you have a lot of cars, you just have to walk further to park your car. I mean, this happens all over the city. You may have to walk a few blocks to find a parking space. That's something you consider before you buy a car. Where are you going to put it?
I know, but we're considering the cars on site. We have no information about, I know that the counsel for the opposition submitted something, a Google view of something on Springfield Gardens. I haven't seen any study or backup or any information.
Well, it's because you didn't provide a study, so
That's right.
we don't know anything about what the parking availability is within the complex.
That's correct.
right?
Well, that's something that Mr. Cooper said that we were going to provide. We're going to go out there and we're going to provide, really concentrating on the overnight, the
Right.
PM and overnight parking.
So, and not just within the complex, but street parking, curb parking outside of it, just like everybody, like you do for other
Yep, yep, yep.
projects.
And if I could just clarify, those 43 spaces, while they may be used during the daytime for someone coming to the clubhouse, they're going to be used by residents overnight parking. That's where the problem comes in. It's really nighttime parking, not during the day when people are at work or at school or other business. So those parking spots are not just clubhouse parking. That's going to be used by parking for residents that live almost anywhere on the property because it's hard to find a spot. In addition, those spots will be used during the day by residents who not just walking to the clubhouse because we're on 40 acres. I mean, someone who's, like myself, I would get in my car if I lived on the other side of the property and drive to the clubhouse. Okay, I'm, not in the best shape, and I may want to drive versus walk. We have a lot of senior citizens on the property as well. So it's not just that, those parking spots need to be looked as an overall, even to take mostly to take off at night for overnight parking as well as the garage spots.
Have you ever looked at the idea of having little golf carts and things like that bring people around the community you know, where they park in one place and then they get brought by a little cart to their house?
I mean, we haven't looked at that in particular, but I will tell you that if you raise maintenance even, you know, $1, people will fight you and want to kill you, and that would obviously raise maintenance and raise insurance and so forth and so on.
Won't this raise maintenance?
Yeah, this construction.
Well, not necessarily.
Why not?
necessarily.
Why not? Please
Why
be
not? Because we
quiet.
have money set aside for the project, okay? And we actually refinanced our mortgage last year, saving us $500,000 a year in interest payments, so we have money aside. That being said, we will also generate money from our garage income that's being proposed for up there, as well as gym membership and so forth from within the community, from within the development. So I'm not going to forecast right now, based on what we've done in the past, and again, this project's been going on and on forever, so we don't have the newest numbers anymore, or what the construction will cost and so forth, but we anticipate it won't be a maintenance increase. We actually look at this very seriously. Like I said, I was born and raised here. We don't raise maintenance. We've raised maybe 5 times in 20 years, okay? We take it very seriously, the maintenance increases that go on here.
We have testimony from one resident who says that at a board meeting, members attending were told that the maintenance would go up by 6%.
That's just a lie. That statement is a lie. And in addition to, because we haven't even gotten to the projects. What they were saying is, that's what we raised maintenance that particular year. That was for fuel, for all the other type of real estate taxes, water. Water and real estate taxes are increasing every single year in the city, okay? That is an outright lie, okay, because we have not raised. We don't even know what the cost will be in terms of saying we're going to raise it 6%. All we have right now is some legal bills and some architect bills.
No,
We haven't gone to that point, so that statement is a downright lie, as many other statements they project.
But don't you project the cost? This is an
We do, and
expensive
what
project.
correct, and what we projected, okay, based on what we have, is that there won't be a maintenance increase, that it'll be self-sufficient. It really, these people just don't want it in their backyard, and that's an issue that you guys will decide.
No. When you say these people, this is people who live within your own compound.
No, that's not true, because the fact is, I have over 100 letters here to give you stating that they are supporting the board and this project. I got an email saying another 42 came in this morning. People who are in opposition to projects are much more vocal than people who are in support of projects, and that's what we have. We have a very vocal opposition. That's great. Okay, we can't get people down here as many on a Tuesday at 10 o'clock to support us, but we do have letters. We have more that have come in today, almost 150. So people think this is just the 5 people that have showed up supporting it. It's not true. The development wants the project, okay, and we hear that every day. They want more parking. Okay, so just because the opposition is louder doesn't mean they're right.
Well, more parking, what about the clubhouse?
And the clubhouse, yes, the letter accepts both. And the fact is, hopefully, if you give the approval, again, doesn't mean, and like I've sent out a letter to the residents, this is, if it's not economically feasible to go forward with the project, we won't do it. We've already made that determination, the board. So, but without a variance, we couldn't even entertain it. So if it's not economically feasible, we won't do it. But without a variance, a modification, then we couldn't do it regardless. So, and we've sent that out to the board, to the residents. We've made that clear. You have a group of vocal opposition that will actually say anything to defeat this project, even if it means lying. And I have stopped them on the street with their scare tactics to residents about saying maintenance has been increased or is going to be. That's just a downright lie. It is a lie.
Okay.
Regarding the traffic count, could you also verify the number of on-site spaces, not in the garages? Because driving through this whole complex, there's all these huge sanitation dumpsters that look like, to me, they look like they're taking up parking space.
Okay.
And they're like scattered, 3 here, 3 here, 3 here.
Well, we have sat down with sanitation over the years to strategically place those dumpsters where they want it done. Okay, you try fighting sanitation. You think it's tough to be BSA, sanitation's even tougher. So they have told us we want it here, we need the turn radiuses for their big trucks and so forth and so on. So we've worked in conjunction. Those things have been placed where they want it. In addition, as you know, over the years, now we have recycling, we have newspapers, cans, bottles. We've had to increase these type of containers and holding pens to accommodate the new laws that we have. We've actually tried to put them in certain areas that sanitation had asked us to do it, and this particular group, even though it took up a space maybe no bigger than this, on the outskirts of the opposite where the school is, where they put their garbage, and sanitation wanted us to do there. We put it there for many years, but because we started this project, they now complained and we've taken that down. We try and accommodate the sanitation department because we need our garbage picked up.
But are those containers taking up parking space?
No, the spaces where they're, I mean, technically, if we didn't have if we didn't have any garbage containers, could we put cars in? Yes, but they're not that deep, okay?
Well, they're like 8 by 8 by 8.
Well, we have at least one in every driveway, so we probably have 9 locations or 10 locations.
Well,
That being
sometimes you
said,
have 3.
we do because the property is on 40 acres. We have a lot of garbage.
Well, but just going through, I thought about a central location with a compactor.
No, first of all, where would we build a compactor? This is not the city. I mean, whose house would we put it next to the compactor? Would we build it on the green space? I mean, we can't do that. It's just not, it doesn't lend itself to that. Years ago, when I was born, we used to have outside sanitation come and pick up, but we still had those dumpsters there. Those dumpsters, I'm 51 years old, those dumpsters have been there for 51 years, okay? So it's unfortunate that we have to have them. I wish we didn't have to have them, frankly, but
They're on site.
there they are. And we've tried to screen them in but there's only so much you could do for dumpsters. And I would love to put a gate in front of it, but the sanitation doesn't want that type of thing. You know, they need access, they need ease, they need to be able to move. So we have worked with sanitation over the years, and they said, this is where it needs to be, this is where it needs to be.
Both the spaces on
Right.
the site. We'll do a survey of the entire area, including some of the adjoining streets. I do want to say that the 43 total ins and outs during the PM peak period, 43 is not for the community, it's a combination of the community center and residential parking. Those 43 spaces aren't specifically for the community center. So
Well, I said 43 because the community center generated 86 vehicle trips per day.
Throughout a day, that's correct.
So then I figured, well, the vehicle trips, they want to park there.
Correct.
So that's how I got the
So
43.
we'll break that out and make it a lot clearer on the board. Like I said, our original study was just to show that we weren't going to have an impact on Spring Boulevard.
Okay, thank you.
So I know what,
Right, and you're hearing our conversation, obviously, the kinds of questions we ask, so you should anticipate our responses to your study and provide that additional information too. I mean, we've done this enough where you,
I'm getting it.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
With backup.
Thank you. Yes.
Backup, tabulations, all of it submitted so we can see it, right?
Yes, Madam Chair.
All right, do you have anybody else that you want to have speak? I just want to point out that you really do need to listen to the videotape carefully because there were a lot of comments about how unclear the application was. We still can't figure out, there's no section that was provided through the site, so we don't really know if the parking area is depressed. We don't really know anything about that. Okay, so I think, do we have more questions from their team? Okay, so now we can move to public testimony. Yeah, but elected officials too. So to start with, so let's start with elected official reps, because I don't want them to have to stay if they need to leave. Are there any people from? Yes, Councilman. It's just because they shouldn't have to stay. Yeah.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning.
Good morning, members of the BSA. I think this is the first time in my life, I've been in government 30 years, and this is the first time I've been in this building many times, but I haven't been to testify at BSA.
Welcome. Please state your name, though.
My name is Barry Grodenchik. I have the honor of representing the 23rd Council District in Eastern Queens. I will be presenting my own testimony this morning, and I also have testimony from Assemblyman David Weapon, who has represented this community in various guises for quite some time as well. My council district is largely a residential middle-class district with many single-family homes and significant numbers of co-op and condominium apartments. The area is known for its outstanding public schools. Beautiful city parks include Alley Pond Park, which is right across the street from the development in question, and very safe communities. Our district is relatively low density and with much of it zoned R2. The area is truly a beautiful mix of housing and green space. As someone who spent nearly 3 decades in public service, I understand the need for development. Unfortunately, across our nation, many cities have lacked development and fallen into disrepair. While it is rebounding now, the city of Detroit is a perfect example of this phenomenon. Therefore, I am generally a proponent of development. However, development must be responsible and not harm the residents of a community. People in my district have chosen to live and raise families in an area that contains parks and green space. Once in the community, they tend to stay forever. It is quite common to find people who have lived in this community for 50 or 60 years or longer. My record so far is 89 years in the same house. I am determined to ensure that any development in my district will not alter the character of the community. When the Windsor Oaks development was originally planned, a variance was negotiated to allow the developer to build at a higher density than would have been allowed. Part of the agreement for that variance called for the area at the southern end of Windsor Oaks to remain forever green and for the trees to remain in that area. The area was set apart as a buffer between the development and the community of private homes to the south of the development. The community has lived with this agreement for over 6 decades. Windsor Oaks, which is now a cooperative, has had shareholders purchase their apartments with the understanding that this buffer of trees was there. Homeowners to the south of Windsor Oaks have bought their properties with the understanding that the area behind their backyards will forever be woodland. The homeowners have purchased their homes and received mortgages based on the value of those homes, taking into account the forested buffer. The community has been very vocal about its opposition to the proposed amendment to the variance. After a public hearing, Community Board 11, which represents this part of Queens, voted 32-1 against the amendment. At a hearing of the Office of Queensborough President Melinda Katz, 16 members of the community testified against the proposed development, while not one community member testified in favor. I understand that variances approved by BSA are based on certain criteria. BSA must determine in granting a variance that each and every one of 5 findings is met. The 5 findings are that there are unique physical conditions inherent in a particular zoning lot, and that as a result of such physical conditions, practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships arise. 2, that because of such physical conditions, there is no reasonable possibility that the development of the zoning lot will bring a reasonable return. 3, the variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. 4, that the practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship claimed as a ground for a variance have not been created by the owner. And 5, the variance, if granted, is the minimum variance, necessary to afford relief. While Windsor Oaks is applying for an amendment to its current variance, the amendment would fly in the face of all 5 of the criteria that BSA uses to provide variances in the first place. Windsor Oaks has managed under the current variance for over 6 decades. The cooperative has not been hindered by any hardship from the physical condition of the forested land. Quite the contrary, the proposed amendment would actually create a hardship for the homeowners adjacent to the property, as the value of their homes would fall, potentially putting some of these homes underwater. The cooperative is not having financial problems due to the forested land. The amendment would certainly change the essential character of the neighborhood. The difficulties claimed by the cooperative are a direct result of the variance negotiated and agreed to by the developer of the property over 60 years ago. Regardless of the time that has passed, a deal is a deal is a deal. The cooperative and the community have lived in harmony with this agreement for a very long time. I see absolutely no reason to change it now. In consideration of the foregoing, I respectfully urge you to vote against the proposed variance amendment. I also want to add that my counsel, who is with me this morning, Steve Behar, his family has owned a residence in Bell Park Gardens, and he informs me that their clubhouse is in fact a converted garage. So it was not built as a clubhouse. I also have testimony from David Weprin, our assemblyman. I'm just going to read a bit of it. As a lifelong resident of the area and representative of the 24th Assembly District in Queens, I'd like to state my opposition to the proposed variance to allow development of the area between the Windsor Oaks property and the homes located on 77th Avenue between 217th Street and Springfield Boulevard. The proposed variance would negatively affect the residents of the area from both the Windsor Oaks property and from the surrounding neighborhood and discard an agreement between the property and the city that has existed for over 60 years. I spoke to the Assemblyman this morning. He would have been here himself, but he is in Albany attending to the needs of the district. With regard to the meeting or lack of meeting that has taken place between the two sides, my chief of staff has been working for months. We have been unable to come up with a suitable arrangement for both sides. I will continue after this meeting to try to broker a meeting between the two sides, Madam Chair. That is my testimony. I thank you for listening this morning, and I wish you all a pleasant day.
Thank you. I just want to, before you go, though you're right about the 5 findings since 1961.
I only read it off your website.
Okay, so those 5 findings were created in 1961. This is a 1950 variance, so actually the findings in 1950 were different. So unless they apply for a new variance, we don't apply the 5 findings. That's what constricts us, because we look at we try to understand how the board was thinking in 1950 and try to stay true to the board's thinking at the time. The findings were, let's say, more kind of general, and we have to rely a lot on the resolution and on materials that are in the file and so on. So just so you
I
know.
appreciate that. I would like to come to a compromise. I've offered my office to that effect. I'm speaking to everybody here in that effect. I don't know if I will be able to, but such is life sometimes. I know that parking has gotten worse over the years, but I don't see it as a critical issue in this community at this time. I would also point out that there is nearly a 200 spot parking lot right across the street on Springfield that is part of Valley Pond Park.
And that's open to the public?
It's open to the public technically. The cops do patrol it at night, so I don't know if people start to park there overnight. We probably have to change the rules or lock it up. But it is very, very rarely full, I will say that. I'm often in that part of the park. And I would say that the determining characteristic for most of the people who live in this community is our green space. Alley Pond, I have over 1,000 acres of parkland. We have the Vanderbilt Long Island Motor Parkway, which runs just south. It's on the other side of 77th Avenue, so not the homeowners on this side, but on the other side, runs through their backyards. Is a gem. It stretches over 3 miles long in my district, and I'm looking to expand that as well. So we greatly value our green space in Eastern Queens. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you for coming. Are there any other speakers from elected officials?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Royston Peters. I'm from State Senator Tony Abello's office. First, let me state that the senator is fully opposed to this application, and he fully stands with the residents of 77th Avenue and the tenants of the Windsor Oaks Tenants Corporation. However, in the interest of time and in the interest of those residents, the senator believes it's best if you hear directly from them as to why they're fully opposed to this application. As such, I'll be submitting his testimony for you guys to read. I've also sent a copy to Ryan Singer as well.
Thank you very much. I think we've seen it, actually. Yeah.
Remember, if you would like to submit your written, you have submitted.
Yeah. Okay, great. Are there any other reps from the elected officials? Okay, so then now what we do is we move to opposition council. So I know we have one. Are there more than one opposition council, right? Yeah, no, I just don't know whether there's anybody else. Okay.
I think it's that microphone making a little noise.
Morning, Commissioners. My name is Frank Cheney. I'm a lawyer with the law firm Rosenberg and Estes, and I'm here representing the Greenbelt Neighborhood Alliance, a coalition of neighborhood residents.
I think you're already, you speak up for the communication.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Start over. My name is Frank Cheney. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Rosenberg and Estes, and I'm here this morning representing the Greenbelt Neighborhood Alliance, a coalition of neighborhood residents who are in opposition to this application. As we indicated in the letter that we sent to you last week, we're in opposition to this application on 3 bases, including that the application should not have been submitted on the SOC calendar and should be resubmitted as a BZ application on the zoning calendar, and that the application and response to the notice of comments is incomplete and filled with unsupported conclusory statements, conflicting and/or erroneous statements, and is missing key information. The time is limited. The members of the community have been waiting a long time to speak, so I'm going to limit my comments here this morning to the third basis, because even if data analysis is provided to support all the application's conclusory statements, and even if all the conflicting and erroneous statements are conformed and/or corrected, and even if all the missing information is provided, and even if the application is resubmitted as a BZ application on the zoning calendar with an EAS and all other required items, the essential question remains: can this application meet the standard for amendments established by a long line of board and court cases that an amendment not alter, implicate, or disturb the findings and conditions of the original variance? Let's talk about the conditions first. The proposed development will cover 75% of the green space between 220th Street and Springfield Boulevard and 43% of the green space overall, effectively reducing the size of the green space almost by half. The proposed development is also contrary to numerous conditions imposed by the board, whereas the board limited lot coverage to the lot coverage of the original approved development. This application proposes to increase lot coverage by buildings by approximately 15,000 square feet. The green space shall be unbuilt and prohibits even benches, playground, or picnic areas, but this application proposes to build 2 buildings. The approximately 8,000 square foot clubhouse, I understand that they're not counting the cellar space as part of that, but it's still space, and the approximately 11,000 square foot parking garage building for the 39 cars. The board prohibited parking in the green space, but this application proposes parking for 98 cars. Again, 39 spaces in the parking garage building and 59 cars in an approximately 51,000 square foot below-grade parking lot. The board required that existing trees shall be retained. This approximately 75,000 square feet of development would require the removal of an unidentified number of large mature trees. The variance requires that the green space be graded so as to provide good drainage and landscaped appearance. But in order to recess the garages and parking lot 5 feet below grade level as proposed, the application would require the excavation of an area of approximately 69,000 square feet to a depth of 5 feet below grade, which will substantially and adversely affect both drainage and the landscaped appearance of the green space. Thus, it is, we think, clear that the amendment will not just alter, implicate, or disturb the conditions, it will essentially obliterate them. Now, as to the findings, this variance was approved under the pre-1961 zoning resolution, as the chair noted, and under section 21 of the pre-1961 zoning resolution, the board was required to make 3 findings. 1, that there are practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships in strictly complying with the applicable zoning resolution regulations. 2, that the variance be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the zoning resolution. And 3, that A, the public health, safety, and general welfare is therefore secured, and B, substantial justice is done. Assuming without conceding that the practical difficulty and hardship finding is met, I'm going to focus on the other 2 findings. First, with regard to the variance being in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the zoning resolution. That is stated in the opening paragraph of the pre-1961 zoning resolution and reflected in the organization of the zoning resolution. The general purpose and intent is threefold. 1, to regulate and limit height and bulk. 2, to regulate and restrict the location of specific uses. And 3, regulate and determine the area of yards, courts, and other open spaces. The board did not explicitly state in its resolution that the harmony with the general purpose and intent finding was met, but because they could only approve a variance if it was met, it's a fair assumption that the board did make this finding. Yesterday, and again today, the chair asked, why did the board require the green space and go to such lengths to specify its development and use? This, we think, is why. Because without the green space, the variance to allow buildings without required yards, courts, and other open space could not meet this finding. The green space was required to meet the finding for harmony with the purposes and intent of the zoning resolution's open space regulations. With regard to securing the public health, safety, and general welfare, we would like to think that this is the progenitor and equivalent of the current neighborhood character finding of the zoning resolution. And with that in mind, we think it's important to think about what the character of the neighborhood was at the time that this variance was granted, up until the end of World War II and for the last half of the 1940s. The majority of eastern Queens was farmland, woods, and wetlands, but it was rapidly disappearing under sprawling suburban developments of acres and acres of housing with no shopping, no schools, and no parks. So this is the context within which this application was looked at by the board at that time, and why the board determined to condition the approval of the variance on the provision of the open space. Here, it is also instructive to look at the court case brought up by a number of homeowners on 77th Avenue, Landau v. Wolosofs, which you have in the letter that we sent last week. There, although the court ultimately held for the owners and against the plaintiffs that they could not be forced to adhere to the promises that they had made to develop the site with single-family homes on large lots, and dismissed the complaint of the residents. It also, and significantly to me as an attorney, went out of its way to find that, quote, "The improvement of the balance of the tract by the erection thereon of a garden-type apartment building project with garages will adversely affect the nature, beauty, and value of the dwellings constructed upon 77th Avenue." The objections of the adjacent owners to the variance application were the same objections as to the development litigated in that case. As stated in the board's 1950s resolution, the board postponed action to allow for the owner and the objectors to reach an agreement. The agreement set forth a few days later by the owner's architect is nearly identical to the board's conditions, except that where they differ, the boards are stricter. A higher fence, fewer uses, no playgrounds or even benches, not just planting, but planting that must be maintained at all times in good condition. This would appear to indicate the board's concurrence with the opinion of the court that the development of garden apartments and garages without the green space would adversely affect the use and value of the adjacent properties. The length and specificity of the board's conditions here are in stark contrast to the recent BSA case of 207-217 Christie Street, BSA 299-82BZ from 2012, which was affirmed by the Court of Appeals a year later. As stated in the record by the applicant, there is no evidence in the written record that open space was an issue of concern or even of interest to the board. It is not so much as mentioned either in the application's statement of fact and findings or in the board's resolution, and the board agreed. There is not, quote, "There is not any evidence that the open space was a condition of the original approval, and the existing open space was not a required condition for the original variance." Here, because the board went to such great lengths to specify in detail how the green space was or was not to be used and maintained at all times, i.e. in perpetuity, it virtually mandates the opposite conclusion, that the board's grant of the variance was specifically conditioned on the provision and maintenance of the green space and will be not just implicated, but essentially substantially altered, disturbed by the proposed amendment. For this reason, we believe and respectfully request, urge even, the board to deny this application. However, the board is not prepared to do so at this time based on the submissions made, we believe, and again respectfully request, that the board direct the applicant to refile as a complete and correct BZ application on the zoning calendar with all the additional analyses such application requires, including an environmental statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no more representatives for opposition legal counsel, then we move to public testimony. So if you would like to speak, please come up to the podium and line up on the ramp, actually, and then you'll have each 3 minutes to speak. You have to state your name, and then there'll be a little buzzer that goes off, which means wrap up your comments. So please come and speak.
Hello once again. Good morning, Chair Promoter and fellow BSA Commissioners. I am Ronald Kay, President of the Board of Directors of Windsor Oaks. I was born at Windsor Oaks some 50 years ago. I am here today to speak on behalf of our application to amend the 1950 variance. To start, I will give you some background concerning Windsor Oaks. Windsor Oaks is a community of garden cooperative apartments built in the early 1950s. Windsor Oaks has approximately 900 apartments and over 3,000 residents. The development is situated on nearly 40 acres with significant green space. In the early 1980s, the development converted to cooperative ownership and today is approximately 90% sold. Windsor Oaks was constructed under a variance granted in the early 1950s under the old zoning resolution, a variance that the property would not need under current 2017 New York City zoning. The conditions of the variance addressed the then wishes of the residents to significantly restrict development, which brings us to the application that is before you today. In the goal of providing more parking and updating the infrastructure of the development, the Board of Windsor Oaks examined several options to improve our community. After careful analysis of our development and looking at industry trends, we decided to pursue increasing the on-site parking and adding an amenity found today in many residential housing communities, a structure containing community room with an exercise room and a small party room. Windsor Oaks currently has a garage wait list 207 spaces long. These simple additions in no way violate the spirit of the original variance as first granted. You may hear today from a handful of residents at Windsor Oaks that if the BSA grants the modification, they will be encumbered with a view of parking that was not there before. While that may be accurate, they represent a distinct minority of the residents in the development who already do face a parking lot. In fact, over 80% of the residents of Windsor Oaks face a parking lot, including a majority of the board and myself. Their NIMBY arguments set aside, even those objecting now will be the beneficiaries and improvements made as a result of this application. Those in the larger community who object to making any changes to the current buffer zone literally cannot see the forest for the trees. The buffer zone presently is beset with deciduous trees and vegetation that neither provides a true buffer zone nor an enjoyable visual experience. Many of the trees are stressed and dying. The arborist studies reflect this in the nature of the trees and that are currently there and the evergreen trees that will be planted. Neighbors also will be beneficiaries of this project with an improved buffer zone and better visual experience. We had hoped to meet with those in the community who have had objections to the project and have offered several times to do so on our own and through local elected officials, including Senator Veller and Councilmember Grodenchik. Unfortunately, in response, the opposition agreed only to meet with us if attorneys were not present. As we are an incorporated body, this application is in front of a quasi-judicial body, and the objecting parties had hired an attorney. We said we could not meet under those terms. In order to get the community opponents
Please wrap up.
to meet, we offered to pay, even though I guess that was not a good thing. Unfortunately, most people who are opposed to these projects are more vocal than that support it, but I would like to submit nearly 100 letters, and I got 42 more in the office this morning that actually support it. So even though Councilman Grodenchik believes that we had no one, we can't get those people to come down here. I would, for these reasons, and the Board of Windsor Oaks requests that you approve this application. We've also offered to use this meeting room for community board meetings and so forth. We just feel that this would actually be a benefit to the community. Windsor Park is in the midst of constructing a major clubhouse. We need to keep up with the times of other developments around us that are making improvements to their development as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, you can give that to me.
These pictures have been submitted previously.
Okay. Yeah, and you'll have to state your name.
Yeah, my name is William Duchenne, I'm a resident of 77th Avenue. I recognize...
Sorry, we are recording, so you can only be heard on the recording.
Okay.
Take the mic with you, somebody.
Thank you. As I said, these were submitted previously. I know you can't get the details, but this just gives you a smattering of some of the violations that have been found over the course of the last couple of years. Many violations predate that. And the reality is that the management of Windsor Oaks are responsible for maintaining this space, and they haven't. So the fact that they say things like the deciduous trees are in bad condition and it'll be better in the future is largely due to the fact that they've treated it as a dumping ground. They've never tried to maintain it or actually plant things. If something died, you might think about replacing it. None of that. To my prepared speech, there's been a lot of talk about building a clubhouse, parking spaces, garages, and driveways. But what's really at the crux of this proposal is the variance. The 1950 variance is a legal document established as a compromise between 77th Avenue residents and the developer who wanted to build garden apartments on land zoned for single-family houses. 77th Avenue residents agreed to allow the building of garden apartments that are now WOTC in exchange for a 100-foot wide corridor of protected land along the southern border of 77th Avenue. The variance, BSA 418-50-BZ, mandates in no uncertain terms that the land is to remain unbuilt upon, maintained in good condition, in a landscaped appearance, planted to a depth of 100 feet from the southerly line with grass, trees, and shrubs, and existing trees shall be retained where possible. Windsor Oaks management has been violating both the letter and the spirit of the original BSA variance for decades. Clearly, the land has not been maintained in good condition, and clearly WOTC intends to violate the sanctity of this 1950 agreement by building upon this lush green space. Alarmingly, WOTC has been clearing land within the protected 100-foot wide corridor for years. Tree stumps and cut logs are evident along the strip. Some areas of the protected zone are practically bare of trees and/or grass. Sections of heavily forested region do not become denuded by chance. This is a lack of maintenance and concern. It's hard to overlook the dumping and garbage that continues to defile the green space. Over the years, there have been heaps of building debris, a rusting shipping container, trash strewn about, miscellaneous rubble, and household garbage. Within the last 2 years, at least 10 violation complaints have been filed with 311. The proposed amendment represents a breach of the BSA variance, which has been in effect for 67 years. The variance has been relied upon legally and in good faith by past generations of 77th Avenue residents, homeowners, and current residents who have invested in properties for themselves and their families' futures. It is very telling that the statement of facts and filings submitted by WOTC's attorney quotes certain language from the variance, but leaves out the words that capture the fundamental intention of the variance, that the land is to remain unbuilt upon and maintained in good condition. Windsor Oaks management does not want to live up to its obligations despite the fact that their very existence is tied to concessions made in 1950 by 77th Avenue residents. Can we really believe that WOTC would not pursue further development in the green space if they are successful in eradicating the existing BSA variance? WOTC's arguments suggesting this project would be beneficial to the neighborhood are simply not credible. As Queensborough President Melinda Katz said in her 2015 State of the Borough speech, as our communities and families grow, we must also balance that growth with neighborhood preservation, which has been key to our borough. As testimony to the widespread opposition, I'm submitting petitions with 421 signatures of residents of our community who proposed this proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Cecilia Chung, a resident of 220-1577th Avenue. I'm here to express my opposition to WOTC's application to build a clubhouse with a parking lot, additional parking spaces, and two-lane driveway between 76th and 77th Avenue on Springfield Boulevard. Springfield Boulevard from Union Turnpike to 73rd Avenue is a short section of boulevard that is dangerous for both vehicles and pedestrian because it is a high-traffic and fast-traveling one-lane road that often illegally becomes a two-lane road. There is even a sharp line turn between 75th and 76th Avenue. Several years ago, the DOT recognized this danger and installed a traffic signal at the intersection of 75th Avenue, but it has not changed the dangerous condition of the boulevard. The proposed two-lane driveway is essentially a road that will create another T intersection with the Springfield Boulevard and make the boulevard even more dangerous. NYPD motor vehicle collision report from all New York City police precinct is a public information that can be found in New York City government website. Based on this report, the first quarter of this year, there were 6 vehicle collisions, 22 in 2016, 38 in 2015, 27 in 2014, reported between 73rd Avenue and Union Turnpike on Springfield Boulevard. Often, illegal passing and tailgating were contributing factors. More importantly, Springfield Boulevard is also a high foot traffic area throughout the day and every day. The pedestrians are children and parents of 5 local schools, park visitors, neighbors, and commuters. There are 10 to 15 MTA and school bus stops on both east and west side of the boulevard between 73rd Avenue and Union Turnpike. In fact, the proposed 2-lane driveway will be in between 2 MTA and a school bus stop. Directly behind me is my backyard, is WOTC's dumping ground for all their landscaped and other garbage they bring using a truck. The garbage pile is higher than my backyard fence line, and for sure it will rot and grow higher this spring, summer, and fall. I am concerned with it, but I am more concerned with the scattered evidences of previous days' car accidents that I often find when I walk my dog in the morning from 77th Avenue to 75th Avenue. And I just pray that no one was injured. That's why I'm here to oppose WOTC's application. I strongly believe that WOTC's private interest is to gain a clubhouse and additional parking spaces cannot outweigh the safety of the community and public at large. I ask you to consider the mayor's Vision Zero initiative and deny the WOTC's application.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Jennifer Camilleri, and I have owned my home on 77th Avenue for almost 40 years. I am a lifelong resident of Queens and have enjoyed the green spaces that the borough has to offer. The reason I bought my home on 77th Avenue was because of the wooded areas that surround my property, primarily the area in question. Knowing that a legal document was registered within the city to keep this area free from development is the reason I bought my home. As a lover of nature and a true believer of preserving the environment, I am truly appalled by the suggestion that any group of individuals would seek to destroy an area designated and legally designed to be kept as a green space. I am sure you are aware of the New York City Million Tree Program, where they are planting and replacing trees with the idea of keeping our city green. How appalled the chief forester of Queens would be if he or she knew that trees well over 100 years old would be torn down and green space destroyed in order to be replaced with asphalt and concrete. I know that each and every one of you must love the city as much as I do, or you would not be devoting your time and efforts to serve it. Please do not allow the destruction of this space. If you want to build, do so on existing spaces that does not affect the designated green space and the homes and apartments surrounding it. Do not tear down what took nature 100 years to create. Keep this area untouched and save what little areas of green space we have left. In closing, I am respectfully asking you to deny the WOTC application.
Thank you.
Dear Chair Perlmutter, dear Commissioners, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak today. My name is Dmitry Baron. My family of 7 resides at 220-35 77th Avenue in Oakland Gardens. My family is strongly opposed to the plans of the Board of Windsor Oaks to amend the variance in question. Our block on the 77th Avenue, located between Bell and Springfield Boulevards, is very diverse and multicultural. We have many families who trace their roots to such countries as China, Russia, Mexico, India, Iran, Korea, and many others. I can only speak for my family, but I'm sure that many of our fellow immigrant neighbors have the same feelings. Many of us had first-hand experience of discrimination, non-equal opportunities, and denial of many other basic rights in our native countries. Most of these issues were stemmed from the inadequate laws or due to the fact that the rules and laws which look good on paper are just not followed in practice. My family moved to the United States 20 years ago from Russia with a strong belief that in the United States, laws are followed and the power of contract is sacrosanct. My wife and I are working hard and raising our 4 children in this green and quiet community. Two of our 4 children have asthma and severe allergies. We're trying to raise our children as great students and good citizens, constantly juxtaposing the rules of law in the United States and lawlessness of our native Russia. We moved to this community almost 15 years ago, and we immediately loved its schools, surrounding parks, safety, and quietness. The fact that our backyard borders the wooded area of Windsor Oaks was a great selling point, as we enjoy quietness of fresh air, which these 100-year-old trees are providing. When we bought our house, we were assured that these trees are here to stay, as a Windsor Oaks developer made such a promise. Now, this is about to change. The board of Windsor Oaks Tenants Corporation is trying to destroy our way of life by removing the natural buffer zone between our community and the co-op. They are planning to cut the old trees and build a parking lot, garages, and a clubhouse virtually in our backyards. We bought our house under the promise that this natural habitat of multiple birds and wild animals will stay in place forever. Now, it's about to change. My children, who are suffering from asthma, will for sure feel this change firsthand. Based on this, I'm requesting your support and denial of this application. If I may add a couple of more points, if I still have time. This process is already creating hardship for our neighborhood. If the co-op is a corporation and they're using other people's money, the board is using other people's money, we're using our own money to be adequately represented. So by postponing this process, and this process has been dragging for already a few years, it's creating more and more hardship because we have to go door to door and collect money to be adequately represented. And one more point, if 70 years ago we had 1 car per family and now we have 4 cars per family, do we need more trees or less trees to create the same buffer zone? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Edwin Camilleri. I am a lifelong resident of the Borough of Queens and homeowner on 77th Avenue. I am also a retired lieutenant in the New York City Fire Department who served the Borough of Queens for 25 years. After reviewing this amendment by the WOTC, I, along with my neighbors, are greatly concerned on how this will be a major impact both on the environment and the quality of life of the homeowners and residents in the surrounding area. Building on this green space would necessitate demolishing scores of mature trees that are growing and flourishing, not decaying and being destroyed, thus jeopardizing the numerous species of birds and wildlife that inhabit this lush green zone and the vegetation that beautifies this neighborhood. The addition of 98 parking spaces will adversely affect both the solitude and the clean air that this green space has provided the residents of this neighborhood. Furthermore, a major portion of this amendment would be within 15 feet of the backyards of the private homes on 77th Avenue, where families congregate and children play. The parcel of tall trees, grass, shrubs that currently acts to reduce both noise and pollution and beautify the area would be replaced by concrete, blacktop automobiles, emitting carbon monoxide and other environmental contaminants. Mindful of the environmental assets this green space has provided the entire community, we urge you to consider the very negative effects this major change will have and to deny this application by the WOTC. Thank you.
Good afternoon, fellow PSA members. My name is Simon Young. I'm the resident of 77th Avenue. WOTC has always been a bad faith dealer. They don't care about issues affecting the communities at large, like the school children and environmental impacts. For starters, they never fulfill the variance requirement issued by the BSA to maintain the greenway. Instead, the WOTC has used the greenway as an unauthorized landfill to dump trash, including a car has been rotting there for decades. They have bulldozed healthy trees in the greenway to put in wood chippers so they can cover up the pollution's crime and to disguise the power of toxic as compost. These atrocious pollutions has gone on for many years despite repeated pleas from the neighbors to clean it up. The true motivation of this project is never about parking spaces. In fact, they would have never applied at all if this were only about parking spaces. Let's look at some simple facts about the importance and potential environmental impact of trees. Every mature tree removes 48 pounds a day of CO2, 30,000 pounds per acre, or 2.7 cars of emission per year. Every acre of trees generate 22,000 pounds of oxygen for human consumption. WOTC plan to offer more parking spaces to its shareholders, would actually encourage more procurement of vehicles, adding more pollution, CO2 emissions to the community at large. Each mature tree takes in 100 gallons of water a day. Without these trees, we have drainage issues. Community with a green area actually average 10 to 20% higher property values. Schools nearby trees also score better than schools that don't. If these trees are gone, imagine the impact. Please bear in mind, within 5 to 10 minutes walking distance, there are plenty of facilities that offer swimming, senior care, social gathering functions. They are more than happy for WOTC to join. WOTC want to satisfy their greed at the expansion of school children, health of the elderly and small children, and clean environment of the community at large. They do all this just to host a few parties a year. I strongly urge you to reject the WOTC request. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just only add one last point. There's a Glen Oaks co-op community, which is about 5-minute driving distance from WOTC. They don't have a clubhouse. They don't intend to build a clubhouse. And actually, this community is thriving greatly. I just want to point it out.
Glen Oaks?
Glen Oaks.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tony Yang, and as a current owner and resident of 77th Avenue, I would like to voice my concern regarding WOTC and their pending action. As we all know, owners on 77th Avenue have established a standing agreement known as Variance BSA 41850BZ with WOTC since 1950. To keep this 100 feet wide strip of land undeveloped, my family purchased into this neighborhood with the understanding that this agreement will continue. The WOTC plan to develop a clubhouse and build a parking area with 98 additional parking spaces and many garages. They also plan to create a driveway for their clubhouse, but this will actually serve as a road. With the increase of car traffic, it would be more difficult and dangerous to walk and turn on Springfield Boulevard for pedestrians and residents in the area. The tree and plants on the 100-feet strip of land help with the reduction of noise and pollution in the neighborhood and serve as a habitat for local wildlife. For the clubhouse, there would be greatly increase of traffic, noise, and pollution. This will greatly affect the quality of life, not only for those people on 77th Avenue, but also for people in the nearby area. One of the most important concerns is the safety of the neighborhood. A clubhouse will attract a lot of people, not only from inside the community, but also from outside. This can cause many safety concerns for unwanted behavior. We are a new homeowner in this area and have only moved in for a little over a year. We decided to move to the safe neighborhood due to multiple break-ins and burglaries in our previous neighborhood. My family and I purchased and moved into this area because of its community, school, and more importantly, its safety. I would like to continue for many years to come. Please uphold and continue the permanent agreement and keep this community safe, not only for my family and future grandchildren, but for all the neighbors in 77th Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nalin Navsaria. I've been a homeowner at 22009 77th Avenue for the past 40 years. I've been a long life resident. We purchased this property with the understanding that the variance BSA 418-50BZ agreement was intended to continue permanently. That is about 100 feet of the property north side, the north of 77th Avenue would remain unbuilt and maintained by WOTC. Instead, lately, in the past number of years, this has become a dumping ground by WOTC. And right behind my property, there is a pile of so many dumps that has been overshowing my property. Now, we are more concerned about WOTC management requesting an amendment in the existing variance, which is going to change the character of this peaceful Hollis Hill neighborhood. Some of the reasons are, one, It will destroy the natural green habitat of wildlife and birds we all seem to enjoy. With the destruction of the trees, development, and added traffic, it will increase pollution, create potential drainage and flooding problem in this Ellie Pond neighborhood. There will be substantial noise with the gathering and activities at the clubhouse and gym for 7 days a week with long hours from early 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. in this quiet neighborhood. Traffic will increase back and forth to the clubhouse and merge into the busy band of Springfield Boulevard. Moreover, we are concerned about the safety issue as there will be crowds hanging around from WRTC residents and will also attract people from outside. We feel that this is not a minor project by WRTC. One can only visualize better if one takes a walk and see the area involved. All these will have a major impact on the quality of lives which has been well maintained by the residents of Hollis Hill for the past many years. As a citizen, I respectfully request that this proposal to amend the variance be denied. And finally, I just would like to say this is what we have the presence from 77th Avenue because we are all concerned and very much concerned about it.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. Next speaker, please.
Yes, hello, my name is Irvin Hirschfield. I am a resident on Springfield Boulevard, near 76th Ave, just to establish that. Most of the speakers have addressed the issues that I would bring up: ecology, changing of the green space for the purpose of this building. I'm personally opposed to that because, as stated, these larger trees, shade trees, provide an ecology that evergreens would not. But I think I would say our forebears were very wise because I think they realized that if they did not have laws, rules, providing for making it difficult to change green spaces, they would be rapidly gobbled up by developments. And this, as was stated by one of the board members, is not what policy is today. There's great concern about ecological preservation and the benefits that we derive from this. Now, let me just say, why am I opposed? My major reason, other than the green space, is that this road that's proposed to Springfield Boulevard would run right behind our bedrooms. Do we want this? And it was I heard it's spoken that fire engines might come back there. That's just what I want going by my bedroom. Sorry, excuse me. As one of the speakers mentioned about 70 Springfield Boulevard, it is a high-volume traffic road. And I've lived there 20 years. I've seen an increase in the traffic load. I think this would be dangerous to have this road going out into Springfield Boulevard. I'm in agreement with that individual. So and I would also say, my wife and I bought our apartment. Why? Because we had a nice view of the green space. So like others, this would be impacted. Now, am I a NIMBY? I guess you might say that, but if others in other parts of the development were where we are, they might take the same attitude. So I would ask you to reject the WOTC variance request. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, thanks for letting us speak. I'm Mrs. Hirschfield. We've been living over 22 years as shareholders at Windsor Oaks on Springfield Boulevard in the disputed territory. On its face, the argument of WOTC management is cogent and even seems kindly. Who wouldn't want capital improvements, even at the expense of protected green space? Who wouldn't be upset about the so-called handful in opposition, hundreds of people whose co-op apartments and houses border the buffer zone, many of whom were the last to hear about management's master plan? Really? Who wouldn't want trees cut down and concrete poured in their place, a walking path behind the buildings morphing into a two-way drive beneath one's bedroom windows? That drive exiting onto an already congested boulevard, cars cutting through from 220th all the way to Springfield at all hours of the day and night. Who wouldn't want all of that? I won't even go into the need or lack of need for a clubhouse. I'm sure that has been covered or will be covered, that part of the master plan. What bothers me is this, the clout, I'll use the word clout, being used against shareholders such as ourselves, the propaganda and the lawyers and the architects and the beautifully printed plans and the manipulation of it all. The foregone conclusion that we shareholders and our neighbors are stupid and helpless and that the variance protecting the green space buffer zone can be altered by and for WOTC management. We are not bad people for not wanting the removal of protected green space, for thinking about environmental impact, for not wanting further air and noise pollution now or ever, for not wanting to replace a sidewalk with a two-way street just under our pillows. And finally, how many of the people pushing for this plan actually live where its enactment will directly affect their lives?
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning. My name is David Jacobs. I have been a resident of Windsor Oaks for 29 years. I live at 7624 Springfield Boulevard in the upstairs apartment, which is approximately 50 feet from the outside perimeter of the green area. The Hirschfelds who you just spoke are my neighbors. The road would also go right in back of my apartment. It would be worse for my downstairs neighbor. I'm upstairs. That area was maintained by Windsor Oaks for years. A few years ago, they suddenly stopped taking care of the area. It was soon apparent why. Windsor Oaks started to dump all of their refuse in the area, which include leaves, grass, discarded Christmas trees, garbage, and anything else that needed disposal. As a result, the piles grew higher. I often see a truck every week dumping below my window. The piles have gotten so high, the once beautiful old-growth trees that grow in the green area are being choked to death. Pictures of the area cannot describe just how far their neglect has done to our once beautiful forest. It is a fire hazard waiting to ignite. Last and most important is our quality of life issues. The project would bring jackhammers, bulldozers, and other heavy equipment needed to build this monstrosity of a project. Pollution and noise would also be a factor. The board at Windsor Oaks has not given us any timeline as to how long this project would take. Residents of 77th Avenue and back of the green area would also be affected. The road would run right in their backyards. These are homeowners who do not deserve to have a two-lane concrete road behind them. Our board has suggested that the value of our apartments would increase because of this project. Somehow, I don't see that happening. What Windsor Oaks should do is clean up their mess and restore the wooded area to its former state so we can enjoy nature instead of concrete roads. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Timothy Farrell. I reside at Windsor Oaks, and I've been an owner for more than 25 years. I'm here to oppose the variance that is being sought by WOTC. There are many reasons why the application should be denied. My concerns are based on the current and past observations of the land that is being considered. The agreed-to terms that permitted Windsor Oaks to construct have been ignored. The area in question has been used to dump yard waste that now rises over 6 feet high.
Just one moment, this thing is buzzing.
Sure. Okay. Windsor Oaks needs masonry work,
So much better, thank you.
lighting improvements to the walkways surrounding our buildings. We don't need a clubhouse on our grounds. Lastly, Community Board 11 was convened in March 2015 and voted the proposed variance down 32-1. What could have possibly changed in 2 years that would now favor such a proposed variance to be even considered? Regardless of what the variance is requested for, we are opposed to this area that is being under question to be developed. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you for coming. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Barbara Ampratt, and I've lived at Windsor Oaks for 43 years, but I was an adult when I moved in here, and I chose to live there, not was born there. WOTC just signed contracts for new windows, fiberglass exterior doors, storm doors, exterior light fixtures, which all will be costly. Those are necessary projects and have been a long time coming. With the added expense of the clubhouse project, which the board says has not really been decided upon yet, it would be a ridiculous expenditure of our money. The clubhouse project is not considered by all shareholders to be necessary or useful. I believe it is an irresponsible undertaking. Shouldn't shareholders have any say? We do not and have not had a reserve fund in a really long time. We should have one. We were told that the new garages planned and the fees from the gym membership would cover all costs. No increases in maintenance or assessments would be necessary. Is that now, or is that in the future? Will it be enough money to cover insurance, staffing, electric, heating and air, security, TV, internet, phones, staffing, and whatever else needs to be hired? No one knows how many people may be interested in the yearly gym membership or parking that is planned at the very top of the hill in the buffer area, which the variance covers. Will someone who lives on 217th Street and 73rd Avenue walk the 5 blocks to park a car? The letter distributed April 24th states that a handful of shareholders are opposed because of the views that might be affected from their apartment. All apartment bedrooms back up to the proposed roadway and clubhouse. The planned hours of operation are 6 in the morning until after 10 at night. Children sleep in those bedrooms. They have school to attend in the morning. It is preposterous for the Board of Directors to contend that while there is space for 31 parking spaces spread about the property in 20 locations, it would be too costly and degrade our landscape. The parking is in the rear of the apartments, which is not beautifully landscaped. 31 spaces dispersed throughout the complex would be more useful than all in one place where parking is not needed. We do not need parking on Springfield at all. Street parking is sufficient. Rules already established by the clubhouse say it will only be for Windsor Oaks residents to use, no outsiders. Yet, in a recent flyer sent out April 24th, it states, "The Board of Directors of Windsor Oaks has advised Community Board 11 that the clubhouse can be made available for the Community Board and perhaps other neighborhood meetings. No children under 18 years of age are permitted in the clubhouse except in the party room. Will this attract younger families, as the flyer states? Will older residents use the amenities offered, all of which are already nearby? This site is not easy to get to." Just in finishing, the homes on 77th Avenue whose backyards back up onto this road project have a large stake in this too. The green space is supposed to be a barrier. Everybody said that. If construction is allowed and the property is dug up, all the wildlife in the green space buffer area will be displaced. No large shade trees will be able to beautify that part of our property anymore. Please do not allow this variance to be modified. The clubhouse project should not be allowed. We all need our green space. We all need clean air. We need the wildlife to stay put as well. Northeast Queens is one of the only parts of New York City that still has green space. Please let us keep it that way. We do not need concrete and brick in our backyards, nor do we need years of demolition and building disrupting our lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity. I'm Warren Skolnick. I occupy Lot 57.
Mr. and Mrs. Lot 57.
So that was in reference to yesterday's discussion. The application, in our opinion, has many unsubstantiated and self-indulgencies which we want to address. Before doing that, I wish to say that many of the speakers mirror our sentiments in terms of quality of life, safety, and value of property, and not just from the 77th Avenue homeowners, but also the shareholders of Windsor Oaks. Regarding parking, the proposed parking areas are in the southeast corner edge of the development, as much as 5 blocks away from many residents. It makes absolutely no sense to locate any additional parking there. From your site visit, we hope you have known that adequate parking already exists, and if more parking is desired, there's additional land dispersed throughout Windsor Oaks, closer in proximity to the homeowners' residence for them to occupy and use. There is no need on this basis to amend the variance and to build upon the green space. There's another addition that I'd like you to consider, and that is in the 1950 application upon which the variance was granted. The Windsor parking complex the Windsor Oaks proposal consisted of underground and above-ground parking, very similar to that which exists in Windsor Park today. They chose not to do it that way. There's a letter from a local real estate operator, Julia Sucret, who has been in the community for over 31 years, and she has submitted a letter to you attesting to the following. There is no local co-op complex that has within their premises a standalone, separate facility that functions in whole or part as a clubhouse, a gym, a community center, a health club, library, meeting room, and/or senior center. It does not exist. And if the applicant asserts that it does, I'd like them to submit specific commentary on that issue. There are many basements that can and have been used for amenities in other co-ops. The applicant chooses not to go that route, but they have all the facilities they need to use these basements and to satisfy all their amenity needs. None of the co-ops have a ratio of 1-to-1 parking. If you go about, you will find ample parking along the streets and inner roads, in addition to the existing parking. Low maintenance fees attract buyers. A clubhouse and ongoing cost to maintain it will result in higher maintenance fees despite what the applicant insists will not occur. The clubhouse.
You could wrap up your comments.
Okay. One more. Out of 155 units that was sold in Windsor Oaks or listed for sale, all but 3 have been sold. Obviously, this amenity issue does not exist in terms of a consideration of sale. And I will pass myself on.
So I'm going to continue with the Julia Shelpratt letter.
But
Do you have, can
state
you
your
access
name,
that?
please.
Hi, I'm Eleanor Skolnick, as I said, Mrs. Lot 57.
Okay.
Okay. She talks about property values. Not only will the value of single-family homes on 77th Avenue decrease, but the many shareholders whose apartments are located near the proposed project will suffer financially as well. Those apartments border a park-like setting. Trees add value to property. Regarding the Board of Directors' letter to WOTC shareholders of April 24th, 2017, which was also submitted to the BSA. They state that, quote, "The plans have been met with opposition by a handful of single-family homeowners living on 77th Avenue, as well as a number of your fellow shareholders. The community has over 650 signatures of those opposing the project. This is far more than a handful." At the Queensborough President's hearing, and actually today, so far, no resident of Windsor Oaks has spoken in favor of the project, even though the applicant had months and months and years, actually, to prepare for the hearings. Ronald Kay, the president of the Board of Directors, who did speak for the project, according to the filed application, lists his residence as being located in Suffolk County. He does not live in Windsor Oaks. He works and he has a business in Windsor Oaks. Opposition to the shareholders is not just about apartment views. They, like all of us, are concerned about the real quality of life issues and value of their property and maintenance costs. If, quote, "no decision has been made to build the clubhouse or add parking," which is in that letter, "and no determination made as to the financial viability of this project, and no shareholder input exists, why is there an application before this board?" WOTC Board of Directors has been spending so much effort and shareholder money for approximately 3 years for attorneys, etc., and now is only considering shareholder approval. They have expended tens of thousands of dollars of shareholder capital, necessitated thousands of dollars of taxpayer money to conduct multiple hearings, and obligated opposition to employ legal counsel without laying any foundation for the project. The petition being circulated in support of the proposal, which was brought to you today by the Board of Directors, they state that, quote, "an aging population can remain in place and have greater access to amenities. Older adults cannot have easy access to the clubhouse and parking because it would be located at the southeastern corner of the development, which is difficult to reach because of hilly and steep terrain. There are 2 well-established senior centers open 6 days a week, providing extensive services, including transportation, to enhance the quality of life for older adults within 1.5 miles of Windsor Oaks. We do not believe that Windsor Oaks has the resources to organize such a facility without significantly raising maintenance costs." Lot 57. The applicant states that the proposed clubhouse is to be built directly behind Lot 57 and, quote, "will not impact the trees or landscaping that directly affect it." Everybody has said pretty much.
Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Forrestall, and I'm president of the Queens Civic Congress, an organization, umbrella organization that represents over 100 civic organizations in Queens. I'm here today in support of the Hollis Hills Civic Association, who is in opposition to this proposal, as well as the proud opponents that have spoken. The reason that we're opposed to this has already been said. I will not repeat it. I endorse it. One comment, though, to the question of environmental effects, and to illustrate one of the things you, Madam Chair, spoke about, is the rainfall. The City of New York has gone now to the extent of seeking out and developing bioswales on the soilways, small 5x4-ish type of things to absorb water. And they're trying to put as many in as possible because it is a crisis. I will end by asking 2 rhetorical questions. How long will this board continue to hear the now 2.5-year process that is derelict? And could it be that the applicant is intentionally having inadequate submissions because he does not have a case to be made, and that he's trying to hold out and get the homeowners in the areas to have more financial hardship and just wear them out? We oppose this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Davita Brown. I've been a shareholder at Windsor Oaks for 17 years. And I must say, I am very happy to see my neighbors here. After what I say, you may not like me anymore. I am for the variance. I may be confused, and I was confused, and I'm still confused, but I thought the variance was to improve the property, period. So if you modify the variance and we can improve the property, as far as the issue of parking, I live right there. I need parking, okay? That street, my neighbor's car has been torn up twice because they fly around that curve and it's like a death trap. They just speed down there. I've contacted the city. I wrote a complaint about trying to do something about that curve.
Which curve?
On Springfield Boulevard. And I understand what people are saying because that was an issue that I had about the safety of having an entrance right at that blind curve. So I understand the issues, but I thought in the long run, we would have a strip that we could use to improve the property to benefit everybody, that we could come to some compromise as to what's done with the property. But I see people already made up their mind kind of what they're going to do with the property. So now, if most of the shareholders don't want a clubhouse, then it obviously is not going to make sense because nobody's going to use it. So, but for me, I'm for it if it can improve the property. Like I said, that's the selfishness in me. I'm for the parking, so my car doesn't have to get torn up when I park on the Death Boulevard. And it depends on what time you come in at night, you know, if you're going to get parking or not. Yeah, if I'm coming in 2 or 3 in the morning, no, I have to park 5 blocks away, you know. I have a garage, so that helps me a lot.
Please be quiet.
But when people visit me, my son comes to spend the night, yeah, I don't want him parking on there. And he's really, you know, unless I get him a sticker, which I haven't done, he really can't park in the lot yet. So I would like parking. That's my main thing. I thought the variance could be compromised somehow on what we could do with the property to improve it for all the shareholders. And that's why I'm for the variance, okay? But like I said, I'm a little confused because a lot of information is coming out. So as time goes on, I will see. But like I said, in the long-term goal, if it can be used to improve the property, get some cars off the street so they're not torn up, because I'm the one who's jolted in the middle of the night. I don't sleep heavy. So I'm jolted in the middle of the night jumping up with the accidents. Thank you.
So you face Springfield Road, then, your apartment?
Yeah.
Okay. And you park normally where?
Well, I have a garage usually, but sometimes, you know, during the day, if I'm going back out, I park on the street.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Lisa Nichols. I've been a resident of Windsor Oaks for 22 years. I am also on the board of Windsor Oaks, and I'm here to say that I am in favor of amending the variance for the mere reasons that we need to really address our parking issues, because there are parking issues. People may not feel all parking issues, all residents, but there are. Even where I do not live right near that section, but I live further down, more toward Bell Boulevard, and there have been cars broken into on the streets constantly. People have their tires taken. You know, it doesn't happen all the time, but it does. We have rashes of stuff. So people feel much more comfortable with parking inside the facility as such as, you know, on the property. Also, I feel that the addition of a clubhouse would be good. I think that we need to come together more as a community. I see everybody, nowadays when people live, they don't even talk to their neighbors. They don't even try. Everybody says, oh yeah, there are activities outside of the neighborhood for everybody to go to. That's true. But when you don't talk to your neighbors and you don't get to know your neighbors, it lessens the value of your living experience. And I believe a clubhouse might actually help us do this, bring us together as a community, not just for the annual meeting, not just to voice our complaints, but to get to know each other as neighbors, you know, and to respect each other.
Where do you have annual meetings?
And we have to rent the schoolhouse. The school, 205? 205 school. So, right now, that would also help us do other meetings, that we could get together more with the community, and everybody could talk a little bit more, and maybe we can come together and have a better ideas on how to improve the property. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Joseph Kinzaneri. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're all anxious to go, so I'll be real short. I've lived in Windsor Oaks for 20 years. I've been extremely happy with the progress of the community. In 20 years, I think I've had maybe 4 or 5 maintenance increases. I'm very thankful for that. Springfield Boulevard, to address traffic, there's traffic on Springfield Boulevard. There always will be traffic. There's fire engines and ambulances and trucks and everything. Sometimes I can't even hear my TV. It is what it is. I live in the backyard and I have dumpsters, okay? I haven't been able to sleep on a Saturday morning for 20 years because they're there at 6:30 and they're noisy, as you know. But you gotta have, there's certain things that you have to have, you can't do anything about. So on Saturday mornings, I'm up early, okay? I'm for the variance. I'm for the betterment of the community, of the co-op. I think they've done an outstanding job. We get major snowstorms and 2-3 hours later, we're out. Where I am, my property is shoveled and I'm able to get out. Okay, I'm just stating what I know. Okay, the leaves are done, the grass is done and watered and all that stuff. Everything is taken care of. Yes, it's part of our maintenance, it's true. But if we can have something that could maybe better the community, add value to the co-op itself, because we're all, a lot of shareholders, I'm for it. I don't see anything wrong with it. And I'm going to cut it right there. I am for it, and I think they've done a wonderful job over the last 20 years I'm there, and I plan on staying there. And there's certain situations that, you know, we're not happy with, we might not like, disturbing, but sometimes you have to deal with it. So that's it, short and sweet.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Paulette Kahn. I live right before the green space. So my window looks out into the trees.
In Windsor Oaks? Or
Windsor Oaks. Ron said something about people having parking garages and stuff behind them. Well, when I went looking for my apartment, I looked for location, location, location. And I turned around and I saw the trees. I said, that's my location. That's when I purchased it, 28 years ago. Constantly hearing about this green space, and I knew about it because a colleague of mine told me they cannot put anything on that space, and I took it. As far as parking goes, I came home from Arizona the night before the snowstorm at 9 o'clock at night. To my surprise, I had a friend of mine pick me up, and I said, oh God, we're never going to get a spot. I'm going to have to walk a mile, whatever. There were at least 8 parking spots. People need to use their garages. They don't use garages. They store stuff in their garages, or they wait till it's going to snow because they know maintenance will clear out the garages first. That's one thing I noticed the night before the snowstorm. As far as other things, there are other things that can be improved in Windsor Oaks. They can use the basements for the community rooms. There is no reason to build a building. As far as parking spaces, you know, years ago, I do have a garage now, but years ago I didn't. I walked, used my little feet. That's part of my exercise instead of going to a community room and using a gym. And as far as the gym is concerned, the community room, I belong to a gym which is about 5-10 minutes away from my house. I cannot tell you how many times, January 1st, the place is packed. By March 1st, you can have any machine you want. People seem to decide not to join the gym or come to the gym anymore. So I know that you're going to wait and have these people, you know, our members pay for their memberships, but what happens when they don't want to run and walk to the gym anymore? And people who are going to use the gym, walk to the community room. Why do you need a spot? Walk. There's a beautiful alley pond right there. Walk. Go out. See the world. Go and enjoy the greens. Stop trying to take things away from us. That's it.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. Any other speakers? Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming to speak. Go ahead. Well, we need to get the council back.
actually have a couple of questions that came out of this hearing.
Yes.
Two, one of them is, I think the president of the board had mentioned that 90% of the units have been sold, so that 10% I would like to know, are those the rent-stabilized units? And if they are, where are they located in this complex?
Yes, those are mostly made up of the rent-stabilized.
And where are they located?
Spread out. There's no rhyme or reason to it.
Okay.
It's whoever decided they didn't want to buy at the time.
Now, another question that was raised was about the basements. I would like to know if all of these buildings have basements and what are they being used for, and that should be part of the analysis.
Sure.
So that we can get an understanding of what is the possibility of those. And I remember going back in my days as a student, I had to do a survey of such buildings to find out are there basement spaces that could be used for community purposes. So I think that is something we also would like you to respond to.
Sure, and we will, but just in answer to that, the same people who are opposing the clubhouse behind their house or parking their house, if I put a gym under their apartments, they're going to complain too.
Well, there are ways
You know,
of, as your council mentioned, there are modern technology that does do sound attenuation.
That's correct, but
so
the
that
same
is
people
a way
would
to
not
look at
want the traffic. It's not even about the noise, which, yes, technology could alleviate. But if I was to if the board was to propose a clubhouse or a community room or a gym under people's apartments, they would complain as is. We do have storage facilities from an outside vendor that takes up some of the basements. Not all of them are basements, some of them are crawl spaces, depends on locations.
Sorry, why did you take that down? We used that for reference. We
Oh, I'm
put that
sorry, I
back
didn't
up.
know you were going to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're proposing the clubhouse to be right behind a number of units, so, not to mention the parking to be behind a number of.
But like I said,
garages.
80% of us already have parking lots and such. It wouldn't change. For the residents of Windsor Oaks, okay, this is not really a change, okay? It's a co-op. We all own the land collectively, so whether you live, and you share, so we own shares. So whether you are behind the buffer zone or you're on 73rd Avenue, you have the same stake in the land and the apartments. We are shareholders, we are not unit owners. That being said as well, I have no problem looking into these issues that you've raised, but the clubhouse actually sits in an area that probably directly affects 7 or 8 apartments directly, or 10 apartments. The lot itself, again, most of the apartments are set back except where you first come in. So 80% plus already would have the exact same style, minus the clubhouse, parking lot as 9 other parking lots that we have. But in hindsight now, being able to do this from scratch versus when they did it in the 50s, we can shrub it and tree it, and, so that they don't, to lessen the impact of that particular lot. The other apartments, 80-plus percentage, didn't have that ability because the place was built already. So we can do that.
Okay, so I'd like to talk to the architect. Do you have other questions for management, or, okay? Hi. So I'm assuming you're hearing the comments from the board, right? And since you're the one who does the drawings, you're the one who needs to pursue these questions. I, using very primitive cut and paste techniques on my screen, have been able to locate the clubhouse in a lot of different places on the site, and in some places where I can displace an existing enclosed parking garage and put the clubhouse in that location, lift the clubhouse up and put the parking that's being removed underneath it. So that's keeping it completely out of the green space. So really what you need to do is go back, assume that the board has no interest, because so far the board has no interest in reducing the area of this green space, right? And you need to show where a clubhouse would go, and, maybe there's a little demolition of existing structures that are needed to accomplish it. Keep all of the drives on the existing drive routes so that there's no new entrance from Springfield, which I understand is a hazard to begin with. And yeah, come up with another solutions, because so far we're not believing that there's grounds for removing any green space. And it seems like you have plenty of space. I'm just looking at that whole area that backs up against the green space. It looks like there's plenty of room to play around in there. So I'm looking at the approved drawings, not what you have there. So the approved drawings show fewer enclosed parking garages than you actually showed in maybe the as-builts. So, yeah, so that's part of it too. But yeah, and so a parking garage is not that big of a deal to demolish and replace. I'm assuming it's slab on grade,
Sure,
right?
right.
Okay.
That's right.
So, agreed? Did everyone agree with that? And then that'll be in concert with Mr. Rothkrug's analysis of the parking space situation and the actual demand and so on. And so between those two, I'm sure there's a way to find a bunch of parking spaces and room for a clubhouse or club facilities, even if some of them are scattered throughout the site, which actually might be more beneficial to people. But that's really an architect's job, so that's yours.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else want to add anything? No?
Well, I think they should, it would be nice to see the board, the Windsor Oaks board, develop a plan to maintain the green
Yes.
space better and clean up what I agree that there's a lot of wood chips and soil and landscaping debris that's just been piled on the site, and it seems to be affecting negatively the trees.
Can I address that, actually? The piles that you might have observed, okay, they are chipped Christmas, after the Christmas program stops for the city, they do bring the trees back and chip and so forth. The reason that you might see a pile there is because every time we have the landscaper come in to bulldoze those piles down, which do a they call the police on us. We've had 20 police cars out there at a clip.
Please, please, please.
These are facts, okay? So mulch and various chippings actually don't hurt, they degrade. So yes, they are high, I agree.
6 foot high.
Absolutely. We will be taking that down next week if they don't call the police.
Okay, so let's just make.
Smother the tree.
Of course, because we haven't had a chance to do it. They call the police every time we do anything back there, even if we do nothing. If we just come back there, if the landscaper is back there for any reason, they think we're demolishing it. I will attest, okay, as being on the board for 20 years, we have never sanctioned, never asked, never taken a step to take any tree down, except for the fact if it was in danger of falling and recommended by the arborist, that we have an outside person. That being said, I'm on the board for 20 years. There has never been a sanction by the board or by anybody to take down trees haphazardly. It would make no sense. It just would make no sense. As a matter of fact, we've put in millions of dollars of trees and shrubs in the property as a whole over the years.
Okay, so here's the thing.
Sure.
Windsor Oaks was granted a variance under very strict conditions. One of the conditions was that the green area be enclosed in a fence and that not even a bench would be located in there. The fact that you're throwing anything in there is against the terms of the variance. That's just a fact. It says so right there, that you are not to use it for any other purposes than letting it be a green space. However, it says that the planting in the area shall be suitable and shall be maintained at all times in good condition. So the only thing that you can allow in there is an arborist who walks around and says, this tree's in poor condition, this kind of adjustment needs to be made, and then trees replaced as necessary when a sickly tree needs to be taken down. I agree, Central Park, they walk through, they take trees down, and they replace them. That was the term of the variance. The idea that there might be a car rotting inside or any other kind of debris rotting inside is completely out of compliance with the variance, and so let me explain what that means. When you're out of compliance with the variance, the board can determine out of compliance, therefore rescind the variance. That's quite serious, right? So you don't have an argument to make. you must remove everything that isn't natural vegetation from the green area, ensure that the fence is maintained all the way around in good condition, ensure that there is nothing else in there, and have the arborist go in there, make a survey like they did apparently, and determine which trees need to be thinned out or protected or replaced. That was the obligation as part of the variance, not an option. It's not something to argue against. It's what you have to do. And having come here, asking for a modification exposes you to us looking at the conditions of the site and making sure they comport with the terms of the variance. Basta, okay?
No problem. That being said, I've lived there for 50 years. I've never seen a fence surrounding the whole thing, only on the perimeters.
So it's been out of compliance?
Okay, it's been out of compliance. So we will spend the money and put a fence up and have to raise maintenance if that's what the board recommends. We have to do it. We have to do it.
And no wonder you have opposition, right? Okay.
Okay, I've been here for 40 years, and I didn't know you guys had a gavel.
We brought it out especially
Yeah,
for this.
thank you. I appreciate that. Obviously, there are a number of things to consider here. I accept your concerns, I appreciate them, and I think we can probably, if the opposition is willing to meet with us, we can come to a reasonable understanding where...
Outside the green space.
Well...
Please don't speak.
I would urge, however, that in speaking about A cases and in variance cases, the term equivalence always comes up. And if something is not covered by the code, building code, fire code, whatever code, people argue that an alternative offers the same protection as the actual code does. If in fact the purpose of the 1950 board was to maintain the arguments that were supported by the 1916 zoning resolution, I think we can meet those requirements and effect equivalence by some possible intrusion into the green space. I'm not saying what that's going to be. I'm saying that the board has consistently accepted the equivalence argument, and I think it is something to consider in this circumstance. However, I'm getting ahead of myself because we don't know exactly what that's going to be.
Right,
With
and you're
regard to...
also not listening to what you're hearing here on the board, that the board's not persuaded that this can't be accomplished off the green space.
No, I do appreciate that.
Right, so
Absolutely.
there isn't
No,
an
I'm not
equivalent to talk about.
No, I'm not dismissing that in any way,
Okay.
in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying that if in fact it turns out that some intrusion into green space has to be made, I believe that I will argue equivalence, which has been recognized by the board, throughout its history. With regard to some of the arguments that were made, I will do a survey, I will walk over to these locations and prove that they do have community facilities that approach what we're looking for, if not exceed what we're looking for. Mr. Rothkrug understands what he has to do vis-à-vis parking, and I don't think by going to the location and being there for one or two times, you're literally getting snapshots at the degree of what the condition is. You don't really know for sure what it is at night, different times of day, holidays or whatever, and we will cover that area also. What I would like to do is, I would like to call up the councilman's office and see if we can in fact effect a meeting with the opposition. We've been unable to do that for quite some time after the meeting before in Ms. Katz's office. We requested it, and for various and sundry reasons, it did not happen. We will attempt to do that. As to the maintenance, we will give you financials if you require it. The fact of the matter is that's a governance issue.
The maintenance,
The maintenance, any possible future maintenance, that's a governance issue, and is ruled by the majority as per, the co-op rules and regulations.
Yeah. It's not really within the board's
Okay,
purview, but when you said maintenance, I'm talking about the
Oh,
maintenance.
no, I was
of the
talking
green
about
space.
monetary maintenance. No.
And that maintenance needs to begin immediately?
No, that's a
because
very fair
At the
point.
moment, the variance is, you're out of compliance.
I appreciate that,
Okay,
and
so
that
green
will be
space
addressed
needs to be-
immediately. I just wanted to address the monitoring
Yeah,
maintenance
so when you
issue.
say
yeah.
addressed immediately, it's not with an argument in writing, it's with guys going in.
Oh,
with
absolutely.
Shovels and
Absolutely.
clippers, et
Sure.
cetera, and bags. and-
Sure. Also, I read the opposition, some of the figures it has in there. It's funny because I was accused of making a number of conclusory statements when in fact the bulk of the opposition letter it consists of conclusory statements with this conjurer's ability to go back in time and look at the 1950 mindset of the board without having any real facts behind it. The cases that were given to the board in the course of the opposition were in fact all cases made under 7221, and in fact, one or two of them I would have put in for in my application to support our position, particularly the Bob Davis case. But that being said, we know what you want. We will attempt to do it. I think we first have to start off with a meeting with the opposition. I would ask them, either after this meeting today, to meet me out in the hallway and see if we can put that together, or we can put it together through the councilman's office. I believe because of my concerns regarding when that meeting can be arranged, I would like to ask for about 12 weeks for a submission.
Well, it's, the submission doesn't really matter, it's like.
Right, I mean, I would counsel that there is a list of things to do here, that the
Yes.
traffic and parking study
Right.
that will take some time.
And what I'm sorry.
So we're not opposed, I don't think, my
Yeah.
advice to the board is that they should accept a long time, and
Yeah.
I would also advise that, that we should, let's get it right this
Fine,
time
understood.
around, and
Right.
that we not have lots and lots of hearings on this.
Right,
This should
not,
be
yeah, exactly, quick. But
brevity, the soul of
Yes.
wit.
That's a joint wish.
But the joint, which is a little hard to imagine
Right.
because of the poor quality of the submission up until now. So the drawings have to be extremely clear.
Right.
We shouldn't be guessing what's going on, like this was a proposal for perhaps, I'm not sure how opposition council figured it out, that it's depressed parking, because I couldn't find anything on the drawing that indicates that, but maybe there was something I missed because the
No,
drawings
you
were
didn't miss it. That, in
so
fact-
difficult to read.
It's not going to be depressed parking, number
Okay.
one. That was an error. With regard to the initial application, we submitted based upon our belief that it was perfectly appropriate under the circumstances if we put in the right type of trees and did it in the correct way, that the 100 feet was not as inviolate as the board believes it is.
No, but the
Yeah.
point was, the drawings were practically illegible, so you can't be submitting things and be asked to provide more information and then not provide the more
I
information.
appreciate that, and to the extent that they have to be
Yeah, yeah.
corrected, they will
Can
be.
I add something?
Sure.
I think this was pointed out by, as part of the original 1916 finding. One was the drainage was one of the factors. And I think if you're considering the changes there, your analysis in the next submission, you need to also summarize and indicate how this proposed change will not be detrimental. And
Well, we
will not
actually have
affect
to,
the
we have to
drainage.
probably have some type of hydrologist look at it to see about water retention and runoff and things of that nature.
But
We also have to determine the percolation levels of this particular soil, and there are a number of things to do.
I would like you to
Yes.
save time.
Okay.
I don't care about the percolation levels
Right.
because you're not building in the green area.
Well, we're,
No, you're not.
Okay.
So, because you haven't demonstrated
Mhm.
that you can't meet whatever it is that you think you need to have on site.
yes, but assuming that we are ultimately allowed to put in parking, then that is going to...
Parking where?
Well,
Parking
where-
on the existing asphalted, or maybe the only percolation
Right.
levels that maybe would be relevant, as far as I'm concerned, are there's some lawns that could be maybe given over to parking. We see there's lots of little drive-ups and so on, and if the members of that particular compound of buildings is willing to have their lawn area
Right.
converted into parking, then yeah, then you have percolation issues, but you can also use permeable surfaces, and should, if there's new parking areas made where the green spaces that we talked about earlier, between the existing buildings. So, those
But
are
it would
the
still
kinds of
require
studies-
analysis, yes.
It can,
Yeah,
right, but
yeah.
you know, the analysis should be the arborist looking at the green
Right.
space and saying, these are the trees that are diseased, these are the trees that need support, these are the trees that need replacement, this is where the fence goes, how to improve on the viability of this green space, and let's not waste time in there.
I appreciate that, but the board has its opinion, and
No,
I...
the board
no.
has more than an opinion.
The board has its opinion, no. Well, that's why God created Article 78. But I want to accommodate the board to the extent I can. However, if it is determined and it's agreed upon by the opposition that we can conceivably cut back into the green space, and I could prove that there is equivalence there, I should be allowed to do it.
Yeah, we're setting we're setting the calendar date. So you said
Yeah.
12 weeks?
Yes.
Right.
And then you will want, Mr. Cheney will
Opposition.
want 2 weeks to respond?
Right, and then do you want to respond?
Sure, 2 weeks
Mr.
after that.
Cheney? So then another week, is that?
Yeah, another week.
Okay, so-
I think it gets us into September, but I
Yes.
want to,
So 12 gets us all of May, all of June, all of July?
Yeah.
So submission by your group on July 26th? Submission by Mr. Cheney, our opposition counsel, on, what would that be, 2 weeks? So August 9th?
Yes.
And then your submission again on August 16th? And then that puts us in the first week of September. Not the first week, the second week. I can't tell, is that a hearing date? September 12th.
Is that September 12th?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a hearing. September 12th will be the next hearing, to explain to the public that the way this goes is they submit to the board, opposition counsel submits to the board, they submit in response to the opposition counsel. All of those materials are sent, a copy of those materials are sent to your community board. If you want to review them, you can either come to the board here at 250 Broadway and review them, or go to your community board and review them there. And then we will have a continued hearing on September 12th in the morning.
and also to note that both sets of counsel are to CC and copy themselves on each other's submissions.
Right, and not to mention the community board, that's important,
Yeah,
just so
community
that the
board
community can review the materials. But I want to point out that one of the things that should be included in that submission, because it's nothing like summertime to work in a garden.
Well, actually, I was going to suggest that...
Let me
I'm sorry.
finish?
Sure, of course. Okay.
Nothing like summertime to work in a garden. That's 12 weeks plus the time for Sir Reply and so on, for photographs that show that the green space has been completely cleaned out of all debris, no chips, no anything that's considered not native to this, what really was a primordial forest. That was the concept behind it, right? That's what's done today, and that's what was done then. And a report from the arborist explaining what kind of work needed to be done or needs to be done to ensure the viability of the existing vegetation and the needed replacement of vegetation that has to be removed for the health of the forest. And a fence, as was described in the original approval, installed all the way around the site, and photographs showing all of that. And you know that the neighbors will provide photographs showing it's not installed, so you better show
Probably from
photographs
different
that
angles,
it
yeah.
is in place, all right? Okay.
Excellent.
I thank everyone for coming for your testimony, it's very important, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so let's take a break now.
Okay.
Do you want to do
Till
the last
2
three,
o'clock.
just the 3As?
The 3As for vote?
Well,
Yeah.
one's a vote, two's adjournment.
Let's see, we can do a decision. I don't know if our...
It would be nice from a mental kind of, to get rid of the voting and the adjournment,
Yeah.
and then we could say, just the zoning.
Okay, so...
Excuse me, we're still in hearing, so I'm sorry, could you quietly leave? Thank you.
Yes, quietly leave, quickly.
Item number
Nothing
10,
personal.
2016-4232A through 2016-4235A Atlantic Avenue.
You could take a vote without him being here.
I would never not be here for a vote,
Oh,
even if
there you
I
are.
did not wear my jacket because I moved too quick. Hi, Eric Palatnik. You must be tired.
Okay, no, good. All right, we have everything, so I'd like to make a motion to grant on condition, the condition being simply that you file that SL-11D with DOT, which you have to do anyway, make it a condition. And so on that motion to grant.
Thank you.
Chair Promoter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda?
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Continued hearing items, item number 11 and 12, 16612A and 10713A, 638 East 11th Street, Manhattan.
Okay, so we know that the oh, you want to speak? Sure.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Andrew Wallace, representing Department of Buildings for the CO revocation application. I did attend yesterday's executive session, and most of the comments, questions were for the applicant for the vested rights application. I did note that I believe the board has two questions for the department. I think I did review the tape yesterday, whether the January 17 plans comply with 2004 zoning regulations, and secondly, whether the corrections shown on those January plans would render the originally issued permit valid at the time of the issuance. So I will, clarify that and can provide a response in due course.
Perfect, thank you. And I know that the applicant's counsel isn't going to be here today, but that he listened to, or will listen to the video and hopefully take note of all the comments and respond to them. And what was the date that we gave?
June 20th.
June 20th for the continued. Okay? With a submission by May 31. Yeah, I don't want to delay this anymore. So submission concurrently, and if they want permission to respond to each other, they can give a call, right? But
Submission by May 31.
yes, please.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this concludes the morning calendar. I'm sorry, not morning calendar. This concludes the appeals calendar. We'll begin at 2 p.m. for the zoning calendar.